Yeah, we're live. Hi, guys. Hey, Squeeze, come here, buddy. Good boy. Come here, mate.
You have something you crave. Never let it go.
We're changing insurance for the better. Switch to Bank Australia Insurance.
Bloody ads.
Don't get left in the dark this Black Friday at Snooze. Half price on selected mattresses and bed frames. Plus, take an extra 10% off selected. Pneumococcal pneumonia.
Not a mystery to me because I know that they were coming from a much more.
Don't get left in the dark this Black
No,
Friday at
another
Snooze.
ad.
Half price on selected mattresses
Enough.
and bed frames. Plus, take.
Hang on, where is it?
Testing one, two.
Hey, Diane, just got on the tablet. I was having trouble. Hi. And
Hope everybody's doing good. Fun times ahead. Fun times ahead. Let people filter in and then we'll get the show started.
hey, Phil, good to see you, mate.
Yeah, there we are. All right. Let's turn this bad boy down a bit. There we go. How's everybody been? It's been a few weeks, but my touring schedule is finally done. Well, that's not true. I have one more trip, but for the most part, it's done. So I don't got to worry about not showing up on Wednesdays. Now it's just a matter of getting here and getting work done on Wednesdays because of the school schedule. So what's on the docket today? Tell you what, I ordered a teleprompter for my setup here, and that should be in tomorrow. And so I don't know if I'm gonna be able to hook it up right away tomorrow because I don't know if I have all the parts. I have to see what
I looked into this a little bit. It does get interesting.
it comes with. But theoretically, I'm gonna have a teleprompter right here over the camera lens, and it's gonna actually I'll be able to actually put up things on my computer on the prompter so I can actually see what I would normally be looking at over here, or down here, and I'll be able to pop it in and out on the prompter, and I'll be able to actually see the screen and just be looking like this. So I'm looking at you the whole time, and we're discussing things, and I'm actually seeing what I'm trying to show you. Hopefully it all works out, and if it works out, we will have a more intimate interaction moving forward. I have my doubts though, because usually I buy things and I either need more parts or it's not the part I needed, mess everything up. So we will see. Let me get my audio going here so that don't forget the important stuff here. How's everybody been doing, though? Let me pull up the chat here while I get this thing going. Let's see here. My channel, input 5. The computer channel, input 11. Both set to record. Make that bigger because my eyes are getting bad in my old age. Time. Boom. I think we're set. Let me hang out with you guys in the chat a little bit before we get this show going, though. Sound good?
No, get on with the show.
Chit chat. Hello, Tony, from your favorite state. That's right, Texas. Texas is not my favorite state. Deborah is lying, passionately lying. What do we got here? We got Booze and Juice says, good morning, big guy. I don't know if that's sarcasm or if it's actually morning time for you. If it's morning time for you, sir, then good morning. Let me turn up some lights over here. I wonder if I have that glowing underneath over here.
Hey,
We'll
Shawnee.
wait for that now. I should have thought of that before I went live.
Good to see ya.
What we got here? What up, Tony and everyone? Miss McGillicuddy. Miss McGillicuddy. Cool, though. This looks like a nice comment. Let me read this without reading the whole thing. Hey, dude. I want to just say I really, really like your content. You and your host are awesome dudes, and you guys crack me up. Thanks for all you do. Well, Jeff, I appreciate that, but I'm the only host around here, so I'm not sure what other host you're talking about. But I appreciate it, my friend. Thanks for listening. We got SoCal Squatcher. Hello, Tony, and everyone in the chat. What up, man? Steve C. If that's Steve C from Hollow Sky, what up, Steve from Hollow Sky? If not, I still say what up, Steve C. McGillicuddy or Icuddy? McGillicuddy?
McGillicuddy.
All right.
It's Scottish.
I'm not good at reading those screen names, guys. My reading level is about a third grader, okay? So we got to keep it simple around here. Head trip, I'm not sure what that means, but cool. Missing Man was awesome, by the way. Thanks, Boozin. Thank you, sir. We got huge solar flares today. Energy is heavy, ATM.
He sent Musk as the ambassador. Why in the hell would he send Musk?
At the moment, I got that one. Boom. Get outside and just exist for a bit. Touch grass. I wasn't touching grass yesterday. No. Today we're touching grass, though.
Diane looks like Russia's going in for the kill before Trump sets the peace up.
What is this person saying? Yo, Tony, you live in the Baltimore area? Heck no. I used to live in the Philly area, but I don't live in Philly no more either. Northeast, out of here. Or actually, I'm out of the Northeast. Boom, gone. How's the stream looking for you guys? Because on my computer over here, it looks kind of crappy. We're going to get the show going here in a second. Let me just double check my stream here. It might be a bad stream day. Depends on how many people are in this building using internet. Depends on how good the stream can be. You know, we got that Southern East Tennessee internet here. They just got the internet going here probably about 10, 15 years ago, so can't be asking for too much. I'm gonna click on this piece. That ain't too bad. I've seen worse. I've seen worse. If it's bad on your platform, head on over to YouTube. It wasn't too bad. It's not the 4K imagery that I like, but it ain't bad. It ain't bad. All right. Let's do this. See where this goes.
Wake up, it's Wednesday, feel the morning light. The world's a bit different, something feels just right. Coffee's brewing strong and the day's brand new. Weird Wednesday, wake up, here's a song.
Not wake up, though. No wake up.
Rise to the evening's glow. We dance to the rhythm, let the good times flow. In the heart of the country where the wild winds blow. Weird Wednesday, wake up, let your spirit show.
Oh,
Weird Wednesday, wake up, start your day with a smile. Strum that banjo softly, let's enjoy for a while. Embrace the morning, let your heart take flight. Weird Wednesday, wake up, everything's alright.
all right. We got ourselves a weird one.
Yeah, guys, when I hung up the stream yesterday, I had to delete it because I copyrighted. But I checked out how many views, and it was 87 views. So I only streamed and then I got rid of it. So, and usually it's only about 35 to 40 watch my streams. Then the rest of the viewers come later on when they log in later. But yeah, so that was good.
Wednesday, not so much a wake up, but we do got ourselves a weird Wednesday. I hope you guys doing well here. Oh no,
It is good fun, isn't it? And we get into some deep stuff all week. It's just good to chill out and listen to some cool music.
November 6, 2024. I almost said 14. We're going in the time machine today, so it's going way back there. But no, it is Wednesday, November 6th, 2024. It is a day that had. Let me turn the music up a little bit here. I went quiet there too fast. I went quiet too fast. I needed that little smooth. Let me down. I hope everybody's doing well here on Wednesday. I wish I could do the Weird Wednesday in the morning more for you, but schedules don't always permit that. So here we are in the afternoon/evening. On Wednesday, though, I was considering going live tomorrow morning and saying, it is what it is. But my wife came and picked up my son from the office, and she is taking him to martial arts this evening so that I can be here with you. So, hi. It's been a while. It's been a few weeks, friends. I've been running around all over God's creation, doing events, speaking at different conferences, and vending at different festivals. And I'm back.
Diane, you remember I said on that last eclipse, I think a knife demon's been released? There's been massive knifings all around the world since that eclipse. We had 7 murdered at Bondi Junction about 3 months ago with knives.
Back. And it was a good time. Last week, I couldn't go. I forget all the things I've done in the past, I don't know, like the last 3 months. I mean, in August, my wife informed me that I was gone for 18 days in August. And then I started off September away for 8 days in Utah. So I can't remember where I've been. Been around the world, friends, but I was last week. I didn't have to leave the state last week. I was in Nashville for BlurryCon. That's why I couldn't be here, because I was traveling on Wednesday and getting things together to leave town. And BlurryCon was on Thursday and Friday last week, and it was a sold-out house for both days. And I'll tell you what, friends, I think that the Blurry Creatures podcast, quite honestly, puts on a better show, a better live show than I'm drawing a blank. Like, I can't think of a time that I've been to any event ever, anywhere in the podcast game, in this cryptid paranormal world, any venue, any event, any conference, any festival that put on a better show than Blurry Creatures at BlurryCon 2 years straight. I kid you not. I get no commission off of ticket sales. I'm telling you, just out of the honest to God goodness out of my heart, BlurryCon is a must go to event. And I think that y'all need to start listening to Blurry Creatures if you don't already, so that when these events happen, you can pop in and get those tickets before they sell out, because this year the event sold out in, I think they said 24 hours or 48 hours. So, you know, I'll tell you guys, it was a fantastic time. It was a fantastic time. And a lot of people were there that, you know, like last year I went to BlurryCon, and, you know, people knew who I was, you know, but this year it was just different. It was just a different energy. Like, I don't know, like the love and support that I got from people at BlurryCon this year blew me away. So everybody who attended BlurryCon and is listening or watching this right now, thank you very much for all the love and support that you showed me last week. You know, I wasn't even the main attraction. The
Hey, can I get on to the subject, mate?
Blurry Boys were, but it was just a really good time, and I wanted to just kind of take a second and just acknowledge that, because you know, we can get bogged down with everything that we do, and you know, as I was saying in the pre-show here about touching grass, well, it's kind of in a sense touching grass when we get to go to these events and make eye contact with the listeners. It's a very special experience, and I can't think of one experience that is more special than the experiences I've had at BlurryCon. So thank you very much for everybody who showed up. Thank you very much for the Blurry Boys for welcoming me out. Welcome.
Just in time, he put his merch up. Look. Yeah, still doing his merch.
We are going to start having more and more people like this coming out and talking about it, because it's no longer taboo. And the more people get the memo that it's no longer taboo, they will talk about it. And it's gonna become a thing where eventually it might even be getting there already. Maybe not for you or I, but people who aren't really into the topics to begin with, hardcore, they're gonna start glossing over it, I think, and they're gonna be like, okay, bro, cool story. Been there, done that, heard it before, all that stuff. But we shouldn't gloss over it. This stuff is going to be only getting more and more powerful as time goes on. So I think we just need to kind of take it in and understand it and digest it while it is available to be digested. Here it is. This is a trailer for a documentary that is going to be coming out called Christianities. I've been talking to the director of Christianities, and he and I briefly, no dates set, but we have discussed, him and I connecting and just discussing the documentary. We didn't even discuss the idea of doing it on air. We just kind of, without giving all the details away, we just kind of briefly discussed getting together in the new year and just having a good conversation. So maybe you can look forward to that if it makes it an episode, but I don't know if we're actually planning on sitting down behind microphones as much as I might just take them out to dinner and have a conversation. But he is still looking to fund this documentary. This is a documentary that's still active in the funding. And so if you go to christianitiesmovie.com, I believe it is, that's just off the top of my dome. Let me just make sure.
Oh, doggy, settle me. No.
Insurance that's a bit more U-shaped. You insured.
New Weet-Bix Bites Cocoa Crunch. Chock full of goodness.
Freaking hell. These bloody ads.
Well, greetings. We come to you from the mountain of entertainment with exciting news.
Let me just make sure that's actually the website. It is christianitiesmovie.com. Man, am I good. You know, like, geez. I haven't looked at that thing in like, I don't know, a week. And I remember that website. I'm hearing like a little mic noise. A little mic noise. That's going to annoy me. We'll fix that later. Anyways, back to the topic at hand. Let's watch this trailer. It's not even a trailer. It's a segment from what they shot with Tucker Carlson talking about being attacked by demonic entities. I'm going to hit play on this, and hopefully you can hear it.
Do you think the presence of evil is kickstarting people to wonder about the good? That's what happened to me. That's what happened to you? Oh, yeah. I had a direct experience with it. In the milieu of journalism, or just in my bed at night, and I got attacked while I was asleep with my wife and 4 dogs in the bed and mauled, physically mauled. And she was attacked by a demon? Yeah, by a demon, or by something unseen that left. Is that right? Claw marks on my sides, on my. So they left physical marks. Oh, they're still there. Yeah. Year and a half ago. Was your wife terrified? I know you were. I wasn't. I was totally confused. I woke up and I couldn't breathe, and I thought I was going to suffocate. And I walked around outside, and then I walked in, and my wife and dogs had not woken up, and they're very light sleepers. And then I had these terrible pains on my rib cage and on my shoulder, and I was just in my boxer shorts, and I went and flipped on the light in the bathroom, and I had 4 claw marks on either side underneath my arms and on my left shoulder, and they're bleeding.
I don't know. I've seen Tucker talking about God a bit lately.
Wait, they were bleeding?
They're bleeding, yeah. Oh, they're actual claw marks. And I sleep on my side, so I wasn't clawing myself. I don't have long nails. And they didn't fit my hands anyway. But yeah, that happened. So I'm not from a world where things like that happen. I never heard of anything like that happening before. I had no idea what that was. I knew it was spiritual immediately.
You did? Okay, that was going to be my question.
Yeah. I don't understand to this day. I'm not going to put it.
You didn't try to refute the spiritual part in your own mind. You went right into the.
It didn't make any sense, and it doesn't now. But I'm not from a, what do they call it, faith tradition that talks about things like that or even acknowledges their existence. Like, there's nothing like that. I've never heard anybody say anything like that in my whole life.
What was the next day like?
Well, the next morning I woke up and I thought that was the weirdest dream I've ever had. And then I saw blood on my sheets, and I realized that was not a dream at all. So I called my assistant, who was like the only evangelical Christian I know, well enough to call with something bizarre like that, totally bizarre like that. And she said, "Oh yeah, no, that happens. Yeah, people are attacked in their bed by demons." What? What are you even talking about? Yeah. So I mean, I'm not leaving anything out, and I'm not pretending to understand that. I can only say what happened to me, and that did happen to me. And then I was seized with this very intense desire to read the Bible, which I then started without any study aids or anything. I bought a Bible that didn't have any. I'm not interested in editorializing in the Bible. I just want to read it and see what's in there myself.
Amen.
I have very low levels of trust for Christian pastors, most of whom,
He's right on there. You don't need a middleman to read the Bible. It's pretty simple.
I'm just not a fan at all. And sorry to say that, but that's how I feel. And so I don't want to hear other people's opinions. I just want to see what's in there.
Exactly.
And so I spent a year and a half reading it, and then I started rereading it. And it was just a transformative experience for me, but I'm not holding myself out as someone from whom you could get theological advice because I'm
Sure, of
not.
course.
I don't know. I don't understand any of it. But yeah,
You
that
think
happened.
God allowed the demon?
I have no idea what happened. All I know is I was dead asleep with my wife and dogs, and I woke up with claw marks on my rib cage underneath my arms.
Okay, if he's got 4 dogs that sleep in the bed with him, you can bet your bottom dollar he's got no children.
And it didn't even make sense. My arms went, anyway, whatever. No one has to believe me. I don't care. But that happened to me. And so I just was like, wow, that's real. Whatever that is, I'm even not sure what it is, but
Very real. And so then that presence of that evil launches something.
There it is. ChristianitiesMovie.com. I noticed that the video is lagging there, so I'm going to start trying to move some of these links of videos over to the desktop to see if that helps at all. Maybe I need to empty my laptop. Maybe the storage is getting a little bonkers, so I apologize if it wasn't as smooth as it should be, but definitely, hopefully you heard it. And, what do you guys think? If you're on YouTube, I didn't get a chance to put the link in Facebook or Rumble today. But if you are on YouTube and you're watching right now and you want to join in the conversation and share your thought and opinion.
Diane, I used to do weight training in jail. That's pretty strong, 30 pounds or whatever it was.
In the description is a link that you can hit and join me on video. Don't be shy. I welcome everybody to hop on with me and share your thoughts on it. Now, my thoughts are that I think this is going to start happening more and more. I think eventually you're going to start seeing more and more prominent people that you never thought would come out and talk like this, people who maybe right now say that there is no God, there is no other side of things, there is no other realm, and they're going to start coming out and sharing their experiences.
Okay, it's doing the glare.
What do you do with that?
Hang on, I'll try and fix it.
We've been looking into this stuff for a very long time. And for the longest time, I think we've all been kind of conditioned to the idea that we're the crazy kids in the corner that nobody believes. And we got comfortable with that. We don't really know what to do with this newfound attention. All of a sudden, people are looking in our corner, looking at us and asking us for our opinion on things that we talk about. We're supposed to be the social rejects. Yet here we are.
I does that for adult children.
Very prominent people in our culture and society are starting to come out and talk about their attacks with the demonic realm.
So he's got a big family. Good on him, Diane. I like Tucker Carlson.
With their encounters with UFOs, with their interactions with God. All of a sudden, our culture and society is turning into a theistic society. Why? Why are we all of a sudden, as a culture and society, starting to look at things through a spiritual lens? My entire life, it hasn't been like that. I was taught growing up the scientific viewpoint and worldview, and in grade school, it was just it was what it was. The idea that there could be a spiritual significance to creation and the things happening around us was not discussed. But here we are. And I have a feeling it's going to continue to go down that road. We've seen it throughout my life. We have seen it. We've seen people sell their soul to Satan, and they talk about it, and we've been conditioned to say, oh, they're just kidding. They're not serious, because certainly they don't believe that Satan exists. But now that we're starting to turn a corner, and the people who used to think that was ridiculous and think that people who would say such things were doing it just to get headlines and just goof around, now those people are starting to have their spiritual experiences, and it's giving us pause, because now we're just not the crazy kids in the corner. Welcome to the stage, friends. Are you ready for the main act?
Yep.
I am trying to prepare and be ready for such a time as this. I'm working on sitting down with a very prominent person in our world. Many people, if not all people that are listening to me, know who this person is or have heard of them. And our first sit down will be just together, again, probably out to dinner or something to break bread. I want the person to understand where I'm coming from, my heart in it. But this person has been getting exposed to a lot of people and their opinions and perspectives on what this reality, UFO phenomena, interdimensional existence is. And I know some of the people that they're talking to. And I don't know if it's the most healthy thing. So I reached out, and we're going to be sitting down to talk, just to offer another perspective on things. It's always good to have options. It's always good to hear other people's opinions and thoughts on topics that you think you know about. So that's what we're going to be doing. And if the relationship blossoms and if it goes well, maybe we'll bring them in studio for an interview. But I don't want to jump the gun. My main reason for reaching out was to offer perspective as somebody who has talked to hundreds of people on these kind of topics, and gaining my perspective through people's experiences. I have a unique perspective and message to share, I believe, because it's not based off of my singular encounter or experience with something. It is my experience and encounter with hundreds of people who have all had their own experience and encounters. So I'm going to bring the Rolodex. I'm going to bring the search engine of weird to the table, and we'll see what happens. But stay tuned for that. I'm hoping that the conversation goes well. I could have done it on the phone, but I don't think my heart would be relayed as well just over the phone. So we're going to be scheduling a time to
That's what they want.
Have a
Even
heart
the
to heart.
elect will be deceived.
So what do you guys think? You think Tucker Carlson was attacked by a demon, or do you think he had a bad dream and started scratching himself like a wild dog, like a dog man? You know, we had Hunter on for what, episode 510, I think it was, and he had that dream of the dog man, and he woke up with cuts and scratches all over his back after the thing attacked him in his dream. And you could easily say that Hunter had a bad dream and he clawed himself awake until that dog man appears before Hunter about a month later in the woods with his 11-year-old son and escorts him out of the woods. What do you do with that? What do you do with that? I do not know. But listen, we have a new person on the watch. Somebody who I had never heard of before. Many of you may have heard of this person, but I've never heard of this person. And this story is pretty interesting. And I will tell you that this person that I will be talking about here, I have reached out to. Let me check my email to see if I got a response yet. We've been talking, and he is unable to come on my show right now for personal reasons. And nope, no reply. And I hit him up today again, just to let him know I was going to be talking about his story, and told him if the opportunity ever strikes, I'd love to have him on the show. But today we're going to talk about a man named Cliff High. How many people have heard of Cliff High? Apparently he's been around a long time. And, you know, this guy, I'm trying to think of how I'm going to relay start this story for you. In the early 2000s, and I'm going to play some videos here too, so that maybe some people can explain it to you better than I could maybe, but since it's my show, I'll give it a crack. What do you say? In the early 2000s, Cliff High, or in that time frame, he developed a method, a practice, possibly a technology. He developed something that it scoured the internet, and it would take people's comments and blog posts, and it would analyze the emotion behind that post, that comment. And it went into some kind of math equation, and it would give future predictions. Where's my notes at? It would give future predictions, and these future predictions come in pairs almost. There's a precursor event, and then there's the main event, I'd say. The precursor event is something that is going to happen that marks the initiation of a future event. And in 2009, Cliff was doing this, and it has something to do with remote viewing as well. I haven't got a good grasp on that. I watched about 3 to 4 hours, probably no, that's a lie actually. I watched about an hour and 40 minutes ish of Cliff talking about this stuff, this situation. And to be honest with you, very hard to follow. He's a very, very smart person, so it's not his fault that it's hard to follow. It's my fault because I'm a bit brain dead compared to Cliff High. He's like a 70-year-old man ish, and he looks great for his age. Sharp as a tack. Sharp as a tack. All right, we're gonna let that one go. And he talks about, in 2009, he ran this equation, or this, whatever this is, these bots scouring the internet, and it kicked back a result, a precursor event. And that precursor event came back as a Rogan Trump interview on a TV show of some kind. And this is where I feel like the remote viewing comes in, because there is a sketch of it, and I think he's the one who sketched it. And if you think back to 2009, Rogan definitely had his show, but it was in his basement, you know, having friends come over. I think Bobo from Finding Bigfoot was on Rogan when Rogan was operating out of his house's basement. And needless to say, it was not the show it is today. And the picture that was sketched was Trump sitting on the right side and Rogan sitting on the left side, the wide view of the studio like we see at times during the broadcast. Trump's in his suit, Rogan's sitting there at the table. It is a sketch of the interview. and this was predicted back in 2009 as a precursor event, a timestamp of something to start. It was it's the beginning of an initiation, something being initiated into full-blown activity. And by Cliff's understanding, I'm trying to remember how he said it during his broadcast, because he didn't feel, I don't think he's the one who felt comfortable saying this number. I think it was his partner, the guy who did a remote view for him. But 39 days is the topic, or not the topic, the number of conversation here, because the precursor event of the Trump-Rogan interview, 39 days after that interview, there's supposed to be some kind of UFO battle in the skies. This is predicted in 2009, before they were talking about UFOs in the government, before it was cool to talk about it. We were just the kids in the corner talking about weird things that nobody wanted to hear about. And now we're center stage. So in 2009, this prediction of the Trump-Rogan interview, and then once that happens, 39 days later, or around 39 days later, and I think Cliff is the one who was not sold on saying that number as the timeline, but I think it was his partner, who we'll get to in a few minutes here, that was more of a fan of that. I could be misspeaking, but there's supposed to be this intergalactic, interdimensional, however you want to look at it, war or battle in the sky of UFOs fighting UFOs, and also human technology like planes involved as well. So from what I gather, there is going to be some kind of, I think the common perspective on this is that there's a trio going on here. There's a three-way battle. There's the UFOs versus the UFOs, then the humans are fighting the UFOs, and maybe the UFOs are fighting the humans too. It's just like, you know, this three-way triangle battle thing going on in the sky. And if you do the numbers, I mean, 39 days left, 39 days later, we would have it around the beginning of December. So you're saying probably about what, December 2nd or 3rd? I think the interview dropped on the 29th. Where was I that day? I remember that dropping the 29th. What was I doing? That was a day that I don't remember. I just remember, I think it's the 29th, if I remember correctly. It was a Friday. So was it the 29th? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The numbers take us to about the beginning of December. We can expect, according to this number, some kind of intergalactic battle, interdimensional battle of the skies. So that is my understanding of this. And we're going to dive into some people who maybe are more familiar with Cliff himself, Cliff's friend. We're going to let them speak as well, but I have to get these links off this laptop and move them to the desktop if this one video works. If this video works better for me, we're going to move everything to the desktop, because I think the laptop is getting a little bogged down. When I do these broadcasts, I usually use two computers for them to save on, what would it be, CPU? And usually the laptop's the one that's golden. Maybe I should restart it sometime. I haven't done that in a few weeks. Share screen. There we go.
He's heavy on the edge.
Take espresso into your own hands with the new espresso collection by KitchenAid.
Ken added to South Cinnamon to his routine, and he feels It must be Tassel. Need to tow or carry heavy loads? For a better journey, upgrade your suspension and brakes with Petters.
Feel mega relaxed and centered with Australia's #1 magnesium brand.
All right. Let's check this out.
This is so wild.
Oh,
So
you
this-
can't hear that. Hang on a second. Let me unmute. What we got here?
This is so wild. So this man called Cliff High developed a software program over 20 years ago that scanned the entire internet and analyzed thematic patterns and language that people were using all over the world to predict the future. Cliff High believed in our individual subconscious intuition, but he also believed in our interconnected consciousness that we all draw from whether we're aware of it or not. So using a technique that he called predictive linguistics, he wrote a program that was able to analyze all the keywords and phrases and thematic patterns and assign them an emotional value. It then uses a formula to gauge our emotional tensions and write a report on events that will happen in the future. Now, these predictions all came with a precondition that Cliff called temporal markers. And that's kind of like a precursor event, like a trigger event that has to happen before the prediction will come true. So the prediction will not happen until or unless the temporal marker or the trigger event happens first. So what did this program predict? Way back in 2009, this is crazy, honestly. The software program reported of a battle in our skies that got chaotic and out of hand between military jets and UFOs, and also, interestingly, UFOs against other UFOs. And this would mark the beginning of an era where non-human intelligence became a part of our everyday reality. And this was all to take place.
Wow, and AI's just taken off in the last month. Wow.
It's roughly 39 days after the trigger event happened. So after that temporal marker event. And that temporal marker event was Donald Trump being interviewed by Joe Rogan, which just happened the other day and is already the biggest podcast of all time. But let me explain why this is so wild. In 2009, when this prediction was made, Joe Rogan was far from being a household name like he is today. His podcast, The Joe Rogan Experience, had its very first
way. This is pretty interesting. I hope he gives the links to this.
episode in December 2009. And back then, it was literally just Joe and a couple of his mates on their webcams in their lounge room. He had hosted Fear Factor, and he was a commentator for the UFC back then, but even then, the UFC was way smaller than what it is today. And Donald Trump, being the president, was not even in the conversation. In 2009, he was just a real estate mogul and the guy from The Apprentice. This kind of prediction back then was so far out of left field that it was hardly given any further thought by Cliff himself. And now, in 2024, President Donald Trump has just been on the Joe Rogan Experience, the biggest podcast in the world. And at the same time, we have so many military whistleblowers, Harvard lawyers, Stanford scientists, all coming out and saying UFOs and non-human intelligence are very real, and that we, the public, need to be made aware of this before it's potentially catastrophically forced upon us. The world is so crazy right now.
Wow. Okay, so what do you guys think about that?
If that's true, wow. Don't forget, Trump organized the Space Force as well last time he was in office.
BS? Or are you digging what the fella here on TikTok
I think there's something to it.
is dishing? Listen, I thought that this was going to be easily looked into and be like, oh, Cliff doesn't even exist. I found Cliff. He does exist. He's been around a long time, and he's been talking about this stuff for a real long time. And he, like I said before, he is so smart. He's a super smart person, highly intelligent. And I really want to talk to the guy. I told him today, I said, listen, man, like, I'm going to be talking about you today on the show, and I'm not going to be able to do it justice. So anytime that you feel like you could talk to me, even if it's at midnight, I'll come into the studio and we'll hammer something out. So I'm really hopeful that one day I get a chance to talk to Cliff High, because man, that's some wild stuff. And so Clip, and now these next clips here I'm going to share with you guys are different people that are involved with this story in one way or another. I'm just trying to find my text messages here now so I can pull up these stupid links. There we go. All right, so this next one here, let me pull this up. All right, cool. So this next one here is this guy here did the remote view for Cliff High. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. His name's Dick Algire, Allgire. And he is, I guess, the one that remote viewed the Rogan Trump interview. So we're going to hear from him because they did 2 conversations, both of them are about 20.
Thanks for that, Di. I've actually loaded one of his streams up next. I've got to listen to what he's got to say. He's got a lot of content too, which I'm always looking for. Thanks for that.
I mean, it's long. We're not going to go through that. But the very beginning of the part 2 kind of lays some groundwork that they didn't do in the first one that I feel is important for you guys to maybe hear from Dick as well on how this all kind of works. So pull up the screen share again. There we go. Cool. And put this over there. We're gonna have a commercial, right? Yeah, of course we are.
The sport in which they gender identify with. Leah Thomas is.
Today we are giving away this beautiful Trump Fighting for America gold coins, absolutely free.
There we go.
Hi, the crypto fans, Dick Algire here. This segment is going to be part 2 of my conversation with Cliff High, talking about Joe Rogan and Donald Trump appearing on the Joe Rogan show. Something we remote viewed and published several months ago.
They remote viewed that. That's how they got it. That explains it.
I need to preface this. I need to explain something which we didn't really talk about in part 1. Cliff High is probably, well, undoubtedly one of the most brilliant people I know. He's a computer programmer, and several decades ago came upon an interesting discovery. He found that humanity has a sort of collective unconsciousness, a collective consciousness, and people can subconsciously, without knowing it, predict the future. And they, in fact, do so in their everyday interactions. And he found that people, when they discuss things on the internet in various forums, they could be talking about their favorite guitar, they could be talking about their garden club, they could be talking about cars, they could be talking about politics, religion, any number of things. And Cliff High designed and unleashed what he calls web bots to go out and scour the internet to
The Cheesecake Shop. Happiness baked here.
don't pull the lexicon of basic conversation that people were having, and he would analyze that and found that it would predict major events. I know that's a mouthful, but it really is. Cliff can explain this better than I, and there are better explanations posted on the internet. But Cliff, in 2009, this was over a decade ago, started getting data about some type of new kind of television show. The word podcast wasn't widely in use at that time, so he knew it was some kind of interview or talk show, but he didn't know exactly what kind. And he knew there was going to be a significant marker involving someone having one of these new kind of talk shows. Turned out it was Joe Rogan. We were tasked earlier this summer to take a look at this. We did it blind, and we got some interesting data. So what does that mean about sci-fi world? Where are we going? That's what we're talking about with Cliff today.
This is, I got to talk to one of these guys. I reached out to Dick as well. I haven't heard back. this is a phrase that has been popping up a lot in these videos, sci-fi world. I think it's a phrase that Cliff uses pretty heavily. And he's even been posting on social media about the reality of sci-fi world rising and how we need to be ready to explain what's going on to the normies. Cliff sounds like my kind of guy, you know? Like, he sounds like my kind of guy. He goes straight woo-woo and is unashamed by it. I love it. I love it. So that was Dick trying to explain this whole process with us. And I'm glad that he even said that, because he's like, Cliff would be able to explain it better than I could. And they're buddies. So I don't feel as bad not being able to explain exactly what this is all about. And listen, like I said, I watched a lot of stuff with Cliff, and man, like, he's one of those guys that just.
Okay, I just loaded his Joe Rogan and Trump videos. There's 2 of them, half an hour each. I just uploaded them, so I'll do that after this guy. I'll do that after this guy.
I'm just trying to catch everything that's flying over my head. Just give me a little bit of it. Just give me a little bit of it. Trying to retain just a little bit, man. Slow down. And in the one video he started out talking about the complexity of this stuff, and I forget how he said it, but basically he was saying it made me feel like he was saying, if you don't understand, it's because you're stupid. And I was like, oh, I'm a moron. I mean, I know I'm a moron, but you don't gotta tell me like that. You gotta give it to me gently, man. Jeez. So I don't know, guys. I mean, hopefully one day we can get this guy on, because it would be a fantastic conversation for what we can grasp of it. Maybe you guys would understand it more than I would. Maybe you guys would get it and be like, Tony, it's easy, it's simple. I get the concept, you know, I understand that, but I'm just trying to, I don't know. He uses big words. I think he's like a former scientist or something. He uses big words like that I've never heard of before. And I'm just trying to make it to the finish line. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to make it to the finish line. I'm not trying to win the race here. Just trying to get to the finish line to see what the big picture is, you know? Anyways, so let me go to this next link here. And yes, cool. All right. Let me pull that over there. This next link here is
Sanctuary.
So I've heard Cliff talk about this sci-fi world several times. He's mentioned sci-fi world many times. And in this video, what you're about to see is actually the sketch that I was talking about. And the host of this conversation asked him to kind of define what sci-fi world is. And I thought it was good, more for me than you, self-serving over here. Just trying to learn and understand in front of everybody. So let's do this together, friends. Let's go on this magical journey, hearing the man himself talk. You should be able to see that. There we go. Very good. Very, very good. Let's get through these commercials. Even though Born Primitive brand, I just ordered shoes from them today because I liked what I saw. Why can't I hear anything? What happened? Is there volume? We'll find out in a second. What is going on? Why does it keep playing this?
Because it's an ad.
This is actually not my fault.
Hello everyone, I'm Jean-Claude Avion Mystic, and welcome to this.
There we go. It's like 3 commercials of no audio. Same commercial 3 times. What is going on back there? What is going on back there? Okay, let me find this timestamp here. Where are we at? About 3:58-ish. Let me pull that up. Oh, commercials.
It also helps you fight disease.
Kill it.
Aging. Watch this video
Everywhere, right?
Right. Before we go too far, too, we kind of spoke about this with Penny Kelly on the show last week, and she says, "What does Cliff mean by sci-fi world?" I was apparently way too far down into the ramifications of that split in that timeline or that demarcation. But explain to you what that demarcation actually means, Cliff.
Well, okay, so it's evolved over time. Okay, because initially the sci-fi world back in 2009. Was just like, oh, flying cars, you know, houses in the sky, Jetson kind of stuff, right? Now it's
Industrial Revolution, kind of Renaissance, innovation boom, all that stuff. Yeah, yeah.
All of that kind of stuff. However, now what I'm thinking it really does mark is the cessation of the old grit model that dominates physics and going into the ontological model.
I have no idea what you're
the
saying.
kind of physics that the UFOs use, okay? Because you have to understand, this is like, this would be like everybody on the planet using water wheels to grind all their food and all of this kind of stuff, and also water wheels that powered belted roads, okay? And you'd have big belts, you'd stand on the belt, and the water wheel would power the, you know, somewhere just a water wheel would give power, and this road would move you, okay? That's a particular kind of a paradigm. And it's like you've lived all your life in that paradigm, and then one day the water wheels go away, and you suddenly have cars and roads that don't move, but you move on the road. So you see, there's a different kind of a thing, right? If the road is like a basic conveyor belt underneath you, you're going to have a different kind of a paradigm about reality than if you're driving a car and you're self-motivating and so on. This is exactly the kind of analogy that we face now, because we're coming into a schism in our own minds based on this new physics that's going to be coming on out, because everything changes with this new physics. It's not simply that you can travel out of time, right, from point A to point B in just a flash. It's not merely that. It is everything that allows that is an entirely different paradigm than humans have ever had to live with, or excuse me, than humans have lived with since this Kali Yuga. And since the 1700s, we've been dominated by Einsteinian grit model, gradually taking over and getting rid of Tesla and getting rid of all of Leclerc Maxwell and you know, all of this kind of stuff in the 1800s, where they knew they were dealing with ether, right?
Yeah.
And Boscovich, all of these people. So a huge amount of our history died in order to get Einstein in the grit model with relativity and special relativity accepted. And then it's gone nowhere. We've got 100 years of dead space with little tiny incremental improvements and stuff. And the only reason we have the technology we have now is because they used radar created with tubes, vacuum tube radar to shoot down UFOs. And then they found digital circuit boards, Velcro, network fibers, fiber optics, all of this kind of stuff. And so that's the reason we have the technologies we have now. If we had not had those crashes and we had not had Einstein, we would have been much further along, because we were on an invention level that would have taken us to the sci-fi world in the early 60s, right? But we were, right, but they got rid of Tesla in the 20s and 30s, and then after just flatlined, we were just plateaued.
I think, wow. Okay, so I understood a little bit of that. He uses words that I've never even heard before. So I like the guy, though. I like him a lot. I would love to talk to him. But the sci-fi model. So essentially, we would already be on this new sci-fi world back in the 60s, he said, if they wouldn't have taken out people. And so there's that. This guy's super duper intelligent. He's appearing on the Deep Woo Woo podcast or YouTube or Rumble channel. 73,000 followers on this Rumble channel. And Jean-Claude killing it. But anyways, so that's a little bit of taste of the sci-fi world that Cliff believes. Maybe I'm misspeaking here, but I believe Cliff is saying that the ushering in of the sci-fi world will start because the precursor event of the Trump-Rogan interview has happened. Now, Cliff, I don't believe, wants to say the 39 days. I think that's somebody else. I think it might have been Dick. But I believe that they're saying that
Yeah, I got this video lined up next, guys. Should be really interesting.
this sci-fi world is now going to start really being ushered in, possibly starting tomorrow. Tomorrow, not this big scale battle, but the normies, as he says, are going to start waking up, and possibly tomorrow, this sci-fi world will start being ushered in a way that we haven't seen yet before. So look forward to that. Look forward to that. I got one more thing here with Cliff that I find very interesting that I don't believe has a direct connection to this Trump-Rogan prediction precursor event, but it certainly is sci-fi world-esque. Before we do that, though, we got ourselves somebody on the line, friends. We got somebody that popped in here, and we're gonna bring them up here before we get to more Cliff. So we got, what's your name, man?
Alex.
Alex, how you doing, brother?
Oh, fabulous. Yeah, so that Cliff guy just said, no, the other guy, talking about that Caliugas. I was listening to this guy named Ian Ferguson on, I forget whose show he was on. Anyways, he was saying right now we're dealing with this battle of Molochians versus Luciferians. And so when you look at Trump and Elon and how, so you look at this stuff, you go, oh man, Trump's a Luciferian. Oh man, Elon's a Luciferian. But really, that's good because we're going from the Molochian guys get all their energy from like pedo stuff or something. So we're going from like worse to bad, allegedly.
Be careful with that word, please.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
The P word. Thank you.
Pledo
word. I personally think that neither is good, for the record. But I see the argument. What you're talking about is the lesser of two evils, essentially.
Right. And it's a real strange, like
that really does make sense. Trump's the lesser of two evils because we know there's not enough time to make America great again. So he's not going to make America great. So he's got to be part of the problem.
This guy is super new agey and out to, don't agree with everything he says, but it's just super interesting because it gave me some positive hope because you go, now, I mean, I am a Christian, but you go, when you look at this stuff and you go, because everyone is so invested in Trump as being this white knight, craziness, but then you go, but there's so much weirdness around it all, and you go, how do you rectify this? So in my mind, now I don't get into the whole, astrology, astronomy, I'm really confused on that stuff, but I don't know, it was just so interesting because I think he's quite right because all the Satanists and the Luciferian folks say 2025 is their year, and this Kali-Yuga thing supposedly starts like March 31st or something, 2025, I don't know. But I don't know, it's just interesting. And then something to do with that, back to the chronovisor guy and the whole Project Looking Glass and all that stuff, the other Cliff High, same guy, or a different guy. Anyways, he was saying something to do with they could look so far into the future and then some random event wouldn't allow it to see any farther or something like that. Have you heard that before when you?
Yeah.
And I don't know.
Was that Cliff High?
I don't know. I listened to a whole bunch of different guys in reference to Looking Glass and whatever all those similar adjacent programs were, but yeah, they were all kind of saying, or I don't remember who said. Anyways, because it was like Groundhog Day, where he would try it a certain way, and they would keep trying to do this stuff with remote viewers or whatever, and then it would. They couldn't modify a certain thing. Now, I don't understand how any of that stuff works. I don't even know if I believe it right, but it's still, there's something going on. I mean, something's going on. I mean, we all know something's going on. I mean, how much of it all is just BS and how much of it is just collective unconsciousness steering type of stuff? If they could get everyone committed to, yeah, Trump, or, I don't know, because it's just so unnatural, I feel. But
well, no, yeah, I think definitely I think a lot of people feel like, well, like what Cliff is saying. I mean, it's like we're living in sci-fi world, and if we're just beginning the stages of that, then we're up for a wild ride, and hopefully I can keep up. But Alex, man, I'm gonna let you go so I can keep the show moving. I appreciate you hopping on with me and sharing.
Oh yeah.
All right, man. See you.
Indeed.
All right. Thanks, Alex, for hopping on. So let's actually kind of piggyback off of what Alex was saying and bring up this next one. And let me just pull this up here. Yes.
Okay, they just brushed that under the table. It's Moloch versus Luciferians. Well, Moloch, isn't he the one that they sacrifice babies to? He didn't bring that up. It's actual spiritual battle, obviously.
Put that there. Now, this next one here, and let me just find the timestamp too, 47:46. Okay, I got to move it to the 47:46 time mark. So we're pretty well into this whole thing. And it's an hour-long video. And towards the end, he talks about this thing. I don't know how to pronounce the word, but it's a place. And what he is saying to me sounds like he's talking about like piercing realms and a land that is reminiscent of the Upside Down from Stranger Things. So I don't know. Let's give it a shot. Let me know what you think. All right, so there's Cliff, and he's about to drop a name that I don't know. I can't remember what it's pronounced like. Here we go.
Anyway, and that references some of the Hurrian stuff, okay? And so what I wanted to get into was this concept of the Jadu, all right? Which is, I think, is where we get the Jedi stuff from. But it's J-A-D-U. Now, it's a long vowel and long U. Okay, so Jadu is a word that comes to us from Hurrian and comes all the way up to Farsi. And we have this word in Farsi now as Jadu Gar. Gar is a word that means, in Hurrian, it means doer in the body. It's a very interesting word, okay? Because Gar is not a person. Although nowadays, in some of these languages up in here, they just translated it as meant a person. And that was not what
Yeah, they also gave that money to Ukraine, Diane.
Hurrians meant by that, okay? The Hurrians meant by that very specifically local consciousness, that which motivates the body. So the technical definition for the Gar word is doer in the body, the person that, the being that moves the body of the person into and doing all of this stuff, right? Because without without local consciousness, there is no motive action. There's no movement or anything. Basically, you're dead or you're unconscious. Okay, so the Hurrians were very sophisticated this way. It's really striking. Okay, now it's not a mystery to me because I know that they were coming from a much more advanced age and that we were all dropping down into the stupid years of the Kali Yuga down here. And so Hurrian back in this, I bet you that the information we get out of Hurrian by way of Avestan and Sanskrit goes way back into the Golden Age and was part of a much, much more rich and sophisticated understanding. But anyway, so these primitive people, the Hurrian guys, had a very complex understanding of what we would think of as like metaphysical shit, okay? And in Hurrian, they defined a a spot, a space. Okay, it's not a place, or it is a place, and can also be thought of as a space, but it's not material. So for the Hurrians, okay, so let me say that in Farsi, and most of these top 4 languages from Old Persian onward would define Jadugar or Yedugar. So Jadu, Jedi, it would define them as a magician. That's not what the Hurrians meant by that word, okay? Because this was, because this, the Jadu, is a place. And I understand why these other languages define it that way, because Jadu is the place from which our concept of magic arises. Okay, so get this. The Jadu is the space, or it's the place immediately on the other side of the life-death barrier. So it doesn't have a referential point. It's not like you can say it's over in that other room, right? But it very definitely exists, because you're going to go there and you're going to find it when you die, all right?
New June 4 Dry Frontier Fridge Freezers, available in 20 litre for $249, 30 litre for $299, and 50 litre for $399. Backed by a 2-year warranty. Play more and pay less without 10% price beat guarantee.
Terry White Chemmart has real deals on all your favourite brands, like Maxagesic Double Action, Panadol Rapid 80 tablets, and Voltaren Osteogel. Get real deals every day at Terry White Chemmart, dedicated to care.
Well, greetings. We come to you from the mountain of entertainment with exciting news.
All right, everybody does. And so the Jadugar, the Jedi.
Hey, Trace, good to see you.
Are those doer in the body that, in the term of the Hurrians, are exploring this place on the other side of the life-death barrier. And they had it defined, okay? But it's not a definition. They had quite clearly defined it. And I actually think a lot of our understanding of meditation arises from these people. But anyway,
I got this video up next, guys. There's 2 parts to it.
They had it defined, and you can't. So in their culture, I'm imagining, because we don't have a ton of stuff from them, but I'm imagining that this thing is widespread enough that it appears in many different other languages, all referencing back to them, this concept. But I'm imagining that it was widespread enough that the word was. Would be taken as basically a socially understood reference. So you could say, oh, where's your cousin? Oh, he's thinking about doing a trip in the Jadu. And that would make sense to somebody, right? But anyway, the Jadugar were the people that explored this area on the other side of the life and death barrier.
Shawnee, one thing you got to admit, Trump has called out the left agenda, really. He's done it very prominently. He's done good there.
From my reading, I'm pretty convinced that that's the same place that I call hyperspace, that I explored with psychedelics. The Jadugar were defined as those people that had a space in time, okay? And that space was 33 hours. And so there's a lot of, we have 33 segments in our spine. The Freemasons and all these people get all bent out of shape about the number 33. David Wilcott goes crazy about it. All of these kind of people, right?
And he left out Jesus was 33.
Supposedly a power number and this kind of thing. Anyway, though, so 33 hours after you died, you had to come back, or you didn't come back, okay? So there was no 34-hour Jadugar. All the Jadugar made it back within 33 hours. There's reasons to suspect you cannot come back if you're there longer than 33 hours for a lot of different reasons. But these people were mapping it out. So they had an approach and a way of getting into hyperspace that either involved psychedelics or it involved something like, self-suffocation, or who the hell knows what kind of bizarre shit they were in. Or maybe it was because they were coming out of the more golden age.
Well, Shawnee, a lot of normal people have rejected the woke agenda because of Trump.
And they had some kind of technology, some kind of machinery. In any event, though, so this idea of getting new forms of measurement, a new understanding of what is still currently thought of as Cartesian space, but getting a new understanding of that, such that this understanding converts that complicated understanding of our three-dimensional space into a complexity, is also tied in to all of this shit here. Okay, so so it's I'm making some assumptions, and I'm making some assumptions relative to what I've read about what these people did and what they went through, and the fact that this has a particular language history, and all of this stuff coming up relative to the TM and the melee with the UFOs, right? And I'm relating all those together, and coming up to this forecast that goes way back into the 2009, also was reaffirmed in 2019, and was actually, we were able to, I think it was probably 2017, and we were able to apply a descriptor to it that made some sense, okay? So along with the melee.
Okay, I got this video next, so I'm going to skip ahead.
No promises. Please don't email complaining that I didn't add the links. If I forget, I forget. They're on video here. Do some sleuthing, you'll figure it out. I figured it out. You can too. So to me, Jadu Gar sounds like he's describing a place that people go and explore. They have a time limit on how long they can be there before they can't make it back. That sounds a lot like a lot of things. Like you could go with the upside down, but you could also go with the astral projection idea of things when it comes to people going out of body, astral projecting, the silver cord, and the idea that the silver cord can get cut. Therefore, if your silver cord gets cut, you...
And Sean, he also plays sympathy for the devil at his rallies. I'm talking about Trump. And he does that snake parable. So he's right about Trump. I'm just saying his stuff did wake a lot of people up to the woke agenda.
Who cease to exist, you die. What if exploring Jadu Gar is something that is reminiscent of something like that, where after 33 hours, your silver cord is stretched so thin, it just evaporates. I don't know. I've never astral projected. I certainly hope to never astral project unless God has preordained it. And I'm still asking the Lord, pass that cup on to somebody else, please. I ain't trying to drink from that one. I just want to stay in my body. Lord. Pass that one on. All right. So sci-fi world is upon us, according to Cliff. We got 39 days left till all craziness breaks loose in the skies and lasers are shooting at other things shooting lasers, and our primitive weapons are trying our best to keep up in the battles. And we got this pretty cool video here for you from our...
Okay, this is 11 days old, 39 days. That doesn't take us to December the 14th, what Mike from around the world said to look out for. Close to it, though.
Newly elected president for the second time, Donald Trump. Let me stop this screen share here and share the screen again. There we go. So there he is. Freeze frame that face.
I love how Trump says China, China, with a big emphasis on the Y that isn't really in China.
It's a funny looking face. All right, so speaking of sci-fi world is upon us, and we got the guy who's taken the White House for the second time in 8 years.
And who created the Space Force in his first term. They don't pick that up. They should pick that up.
Talking about future technology and possibly flying cars. Let's take a listen to what Donald J. Trump has to say about such things.
Another big opportunity is in transportation. Dozens of major companies in the United States and China are racing to develop vertical takeoff and landing vehicles for families and individuals. Just as the United States led the automotive revolution in the last century, I want to ensure that America, not China, leads this revolution in air mobility. These breakthroughs can transform commerce, bring a giant infusion of wealth into rural America, and connect families in our country in new ways. So U.S.-based car makers and manufacturers will also be rewarded.
So listen.
And Diane, do you remember Trump said when he was in office, he done a big photo op and all these generals and that were around him, and he said, "This is the calm before the storm." And he repeated it 2 or 3 times. Then, like 6 months later, we got, you know what, COVID.
I would listen. If I heard that, in 2016, if I heard that in 2015, I would be like, come on, bull crap. This guy's already been in the White House and he started a whole new branch of our military called Space Force. And
he picked it up, yeehaw.
And he's hanging out with the likes of Elon Musk. That seems like it has Elon Musk's name all over it. So listen, I don't have a Tesla. I'm not a big fan of self-driving vehicles. Right now, at least, I reserve the right to change my mind. But I'm not a big fan of what Elon's doing with the Teslas and, you know, the self-driving vehicles. I hear too many. So what's for breakfast? Wheat Bix,
Banana.
honey.
Greek yogurt and strawberries.
Wheat Bix. How do you do yours?
There is something about a Maserati Grecale that makes your heart beat faster.
Yeah, the price
Too many
range.
conspiracies that you know these things are driving into other vehicles and they're taking off and you have no control over them. They're glitching. Listen. I'm gonna stay in my F-150, good old dinosaur fuel, and I'm just gonna ride that one out. You know. So when it comes to vertical takeoff vehicles,
Shawnee, you're bringing up the Rapture. The pre-trib guys, they're running out of time. We're just about to hit tribulation. They're running out of time. I'm not sure about the Rapture. I'm just going to play it safe and expect to be here till Armageddon.
for families, I'm not into it. I'm not into it. I'm the guy that used to be really scared to fly. Now I've been flying so much in the last year to 2 years that not scared anymore, but not a huge fan either. Now the idea that I could have my own flying vehicle and be in control of it makes me a little bit more comfortable than getting on a plane, to be honest with you, because I got trust issues. Captain, what were you doing last night? Are you drinking? What were you and the stewardess doing? Huh? Gonna interrogate the captain before he takes that plane off. I want to know how aware you are, sir. But me, if I could fly my own vehicle, I'm more on board with that than flying on a commercial plane, to be honest with you. But I'm less on board with that than driving a Tesla. So that's like the rankings. We got Ford F-150 on dinosaur fuel, electric Tesla that runs into vehicles and crashes at random, flying personal vehicles.
And the Tesla vehicles where their batteries blow up and catch on fire.
Vehicle that I keep in my driveway and take my family to dinner in Connecticut anytime I want. Commercial planes. Way, 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 way down on that list. Don't trust them. Boeing, sorry. Don't trust you. What do you guys think? You guys want that vertical takeoff vehicle? Be more expeditious in your commutes to work? Maybe these vertical takeoff vehicles will go and they'll be self-propelled. You don't have to even fly them. You can smack the kids in the back seat for yelling too much or something. You can eat your bowl of cereal safely. Oh.
These flying cars, they would have to have some sort of order in the sky. They all couldn't just go wherever they wanted. Because let's say 1,000 people have got these cars in the sky, they're going to crash into each other. They must somehow set up lanes in the sky. That's the only way it'd work safely.
Alarm's going off. I'm supposed to be at church in 25 minutes. But yes, maybe you could let that thing fly itself. You get there faster, and you get to eat your cereal without driving with your knees. I think I'm talking myself into this. Friends. Wow. We're living in sci-fi world. We just are. Anybody my age or older, even younger. I mean, listen, let me think here. Space Force 2018, 2017, something like that. So anybody who was probably born, let's just say the year 2000 and under, later. This is sci-fi world. This wasn't supposed to exist when you were born and when you were growing up as a kid. Here we are. We're talking about driving vehicles that already are happening, rockets being caught by robots off of the ocean, flying vehicles like the Jetsons. Man. Wild times. It's only going to get crazier. I'm here for it. I wonder what the world's going to be like when my kids are of driving age. My son's going to be turning 7 very soon. Wow. So he's 9 years away from driving. Is he 9 years away from flying a vehicle?
Yep.
Not in my house.
Yep, they'd have it sorted out within 9 years.
No, not in my house. We're going to keep that on lock, just like social media. No flying vehicles, no Instagram till you're 18. And for my daughter, you ain't getting married till I'm dead. I'm the only man that's allowed to love you. Wild times. I hope you guys are ready for this, though. I think it's going to get really, really crazy over the next 5. What year are we? About to turn 20. Yeah, let's just say the next 5 years. So by the time we get to 2030, buckle up. It's going to get bonkers.
Diane, I reckon it's going to be the North Koreans that are the guards in your camps.
Many of you are ready for it. I am. I was reading, I'm still.
The Japs used the Koreans in World War II as prison guards or, prison camp guards. And I think they'll do the same in America with the FEMA camps.
Reading. There's a book, Return of the Gods by Jonathan Cahn. The Return of the Gods by Jonathan Cahn. And in the second chapter of that book, if you're an OG listener of the Confessionals podcast and you share my theological perspectives, you read that second chapter of that book and you will put it down and run around your room out of just pure energy because you've been saying, and finally somebody's confirming. You've been saying. That's what happened to me. I had to read the chapter like 2 times before I could move on because I was missing half the stuff because I was just like, what? Crazy book. Return of the Gods by Jonathan Cahn. Check it out. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe we'll have Jonathan Cahn on the show one day. Maybe we'll bring him in studio. That'd be fun.
Shawnee, I think 2025
I don't know if he
is
does
going to be
studio
the start
visits.
of
He's a pretty busy guy
tribulation.
from what I hear. So we shall see. But things are getting crazy. Where's that last one? I have one more thing for you guys. At least I thought I did. Oh, here it is. Sorry, on this computer. So this is I saved this for last because it's a little.
Hey, I was never here. Good to see you.
Okay, it's a little off target. This is not something that is really talking about what we just talked about for the last hour and a half, but a little bit. Who wants to talk about portals in Detroit? Yeah, I know you do. Let's do this. Share the screen, Instagram.
Because I was praying against this thing. But look, watch this. Look at this.
Refresh.
Portal for the local principalities. Now, if you saw my last video, you know about the stones and what I mentioned about the rituals. Look what it's called. Transcending. Come on, guys. Really? If you can't, I don't even, do I have to explain this? Now, I actually came here before.
A spiral, look at that, just like CERN.
And I prayed standing here. I will show you. Right there. You know what happened? My feet started burning when I saw, because I was praying against this thing. But look, watch this. Look at this. Look, these hands. All the ones. Now, I know they're going to tell you that it's supposed to represent certain things, but all this stuff has spiritual symbology to it. And all these stones, it's a channel energy. Big part of it.
Oh, Ross, you're part of the family. It's always good when you show up.
Big old ritual. Giant.
All right. So there we go. All right, cool. So I don't know. I thought it was an interesting video. I'm not saying it's a portal or anything like that. That guy's probably I don't know, on Planet 9.
Okay, I'll just say it. That was a portal, guys. It even had a spiral in it. What's going on? What's going on with the road?
10, 15.
What are you doing, honey?
There's nothing better than watching my robot clean.
Feel mega relaxed and centered with Australia's #1 magnesium brand.
I don't know. But I found it interesting. It looks kind of portally, and the swirls and all that stuff. So, you know, portals to Jadugar. Is that how you pronounce it? Jadugar. Portals to Jadugar. What do you think? Samuel Lofton, thanks for the super chat, friend. Thanks for the super chat. Tina says, okay, where's your proof? Come on, Tina. It's a video. How are you going to prove it? Touch grass, Tina, and have fun. Thanks for the super chat, though, man. And let's give a shout out here to Vanessa Mitchell for becoming a channel member. Shout out to Vanessa Mitchell for becoming a channel member and professional YouTube watcher. Well, you found the right place. You found the right place, professional YouTube watcher, thanks for becoming a channel member here on the Confessionals YouTube channel. I just found out last time I broadcast with you guys that I can actually, like, the StreamYard actually separates the comments from the super chats and the member stuff, so I can give proper shout outs. So thanks for all the love and support, guys, on this channel. And you know, listen, this is a weird Wednesday, and I don't know if I relayed the message very well to you guys. I feel kind of dead inside.
No, you done okay. Guys, I'm going to switch over to that 39 days guy. Which one is he? Is it part 1 and 2? There's part 1. Okay, title is 39 Days to Malay, Trump and Rogan, temporal marker, cliff high.
It's a little tiny bit stormy out there at the moment. It looks more wet than it actually is. Anyway, I needed to do this fairly quick. I'll probably have to take a break because I'm a long-winded motherfucker. And but I got a pie in the oven, so I've got in about 20 minutes. I've got to go check it and probably take it out at that point. It's a sheet pie from the huckleberries, which are really ripe at the moment. Okay, so some more complicated time stuff. Kind of cool, sort of interesting, especially for us guys involved in it. There's a video out there with Dick Allgeier interviewing me, and that video is from some time back. I think it was like 2019 or 2020 that we did that. But to be honest, I haven't been thinking about times that way, so I'm not really sure when it was done. Okay, but here's the thing. Here's the progression of events. In about the period of time that we had the 2008 crash, financial crash, we started getting in all kinds of new technology stuff in the data. This was also in that period of time where we knew there was new money coming, but we didn't know it was going to be called Bitcoin or cryptos or whatever, right? We just knew it was going to emerge, which it did, and so on. Within those same sets were other forms of technology that were being referenced. One of these other forms of technology that was being referenced is what we now call podcasts. Okay, a person to potentially hundreds of millions direct feed with no broadcast corporation in between, right? There is in the sense of YouTube or Spotify or that kind of stuff. So the corporations are trying to control it, right? Any organization will be infiltrated by the Elohim worship cult and used to their end. So anyway, so the data forecast this stuff that we didn't know it was going to be called a podcast. The term was out there, I think, at the time that it first started showing up in the data, but it was as a descriptor that we were seeing it. So it wasn't linked to the term podcast. It had yet to cement to that. In any event, time passes, more data comes in, the descriptors for the technology firm up, and then we get to this point where, like I say, about a year after the financial crash, so about 2009, we get into a situation where there's a forecast of a temporal marker. Now, you have to understand something about the data sets and why temporal markers are really important. Okay, so all of the time components within the data are calculated based on the duration of emotional impact for a word in that context as the weighted indices algorithm is applied to it. Okay, so I had to come up with these numbers. And so I would go through long lists of words and say, oh, well, that word under these contexts would have this sort of a long duration. And then I just take a stab at it. Eventually, we codified on some ranges, okay? And so it came down to immediacy language, midterm language, and then long-term language. Long-term language and midterm language were separated at about 19 months. But there's sort of an overlap on all of this. What the process is to go through and get all this language off the internet, go through the pre-processing that sucks out the potentially prescient stuff, and then apply these constraint processes to it. And in the constraint processes is one of those that figures out the time impact of this word in that context in this particular set, because it's going to vary. So you could have trial, okay, just as an example word. You could say, if you had the word trial and you had it associated with by fire, you would say trial by fire. The fact that you have that by fire there shortens its potential impact emotionally, because you're talking about an analog to a real world kind of a thing where you had a trial by fire and you're not sitting your ass around waiting, right? A trial by fire is a quick kind of a thing. Or you could have a legal trial. So if you had legal trial in there, that shit might drag on for decades. So you see that the word itself could have various different temporal connotations at any given point relative to the discussion. You get the idea. This applies to all the descriptors, mainly the verbs, adverbs, adjectives, and then ultimately nouns as descriptors. Okay, so in the data, so that's that. All right, so there's two aspects. Well, there's actually three aspects, but there's two major primary levels of processing for the data processing stuff I do. One of which is to examine all the words, just as I said, that would ultimately lead to the duration amounts being calculated, summed, averaged, et cetera, right? Then there's also this other aspect of that, and that is the context. Now, I did not write a natural language processing AI the way that chat is, for instance, right? Where you could talk to it in quasi-English. My approach has to do some of that work, but I didn't do it for an interface for me because it wasn't necessary. All right, so the part of the processing is still requires the language part of the processing to identify with and get connected to language that is understood, so to speak, right? It's not understood by the software because I had to put all that shit into the database. It was understood by me at the time that I made these cross connections within the database. But to a certain extent, we humans can think of it as the software processing the context or processing the read, the data that's been captured, to try and achieve an understanding of the context, okay? And then that is applied to the words that are then being summed for the duration. I hope that makes sense. Basically, it's a very sophisticated form of a computer-assisted guessing on time. So sometimes within the data, occasionally we would get these things I would call temporal markers, where a data set would arise that had cross-links that were extremely strong and very clear, and these cross-links would each have a referential point to something occurring in time, okay? They wouldn't necessarily give you a day, wouldn't necessarily even give you a year, but it would say, basically, it would say, if this occurs, or when this occurs, then that occurs shortly thereafter. Or just before this manifests, look for this, because over here, because this will be manifesting just ahead of that. You could have, reading the data sets and so forth, and looking at the numerics, you could judge the temporal referential relationship between the various different data sets, okay? So if a data set popped up and said, you know, a specific thing, like the Costa Concordia. Okay, that was a prediction I made that was like 5 or 8 months ahead of time, in which I said there was going to be a blonde on a boat that was going to cause problems and mayhem. It was entitled, a little section in the report was entitled "Blondes on Boats." And it happened. Okay, a blonde was taken up by a captain on the Costa Concordia cruise ship, and he got to fiddling around with her when he.
Diane, how could carrot leaves get E. coli on there? That's got to be done. That's got to be planted. That couldn't just be an accident. How does that happen?
Should have been fiddling around.
It's got to be planted.
And with the boat, and falling over. Okay, so we had it. That was a temporal marker because there were things that were connected, especially crypto at that time, within my data processing that said when the blondes on the boats things happen, this other stuff's going to happen. And so we were able to say, okay, we had like I think we had 5 or 8 months, I can't remember, lead time on the blondes on boats. There was a distance after that within the data sets that appeared to be about 3 months. So we knew we had about 3 months for this other stuff to pop up. That's pertinent in a second. Anyway, so, okay, so that would be a temporal marker, right? Once it's happened, then this other.
There's big talk Trump's going to bring in a third temple, and it makes sense.
Stuff is more likely to occur. And it's not the blondes on boats must have happened for this other stuff to have happened, but in our predictive linguistics, they were linked temporally close enough that the algorithm was associating them within a specific period of time. I don't want to get into details and drive people crazy. Okay, so there's so much we don't know about time. There's so much we don't know about the ability of predictive linguistics relative to the mass psychic impressions. And I was just guessing for time on all of these words, millions of things. Okay, it was automated. It didn't go through millions, but nonetheless, it was quite the tedious thing. It took years. Okay, so we have a temporal marker that originally showed up in the podcast thing in 2009. Okay, in 2009 it started shaping up as a temporal marker that would be almost impossible to miss should it ever arise. Okay, and that this temporal marker was going to be as I couldn't get a word big enough, and Dick Allgaier reminded me in the interview that it was going to be basically iconic, and that's what it is. Okay, so. The temporal marker that we're discussing here is a Rogan-Trump interview, right? Or Trump being interviewed by Rogan, or a discussion, or however we want to talk about it, right? On the Joe Rogan podcast. Now, this is pertinent because I'd had this percolating since 2009, and then I had, at some point later on, I'd gone and I'd put in a request with the Future Forecasting Group, as they're called now, and talked to headquarters and got them to do a future forecasting sweep on my situation. Was this thing going to occur? I'm damned if they didn't nail it. You should go look up that video. If I get my shit together, I'll put a descriptor in or put a link in under in the description for this video. Anyway, so Dick Allgaier comes back with drawings, drawing Trump and Joe Rogan, the whole damn thing, right? And so at that time, we had just, at the time of the video that Dick Allgaier made, and going into the interview with me, it was a temporal marker, but the interview never happened because it was all about the debate. But you'll see in the discussion I had with Dick that I didn't expect the debate to occur because my data said, it clearly showed that it was just the two of them, that this iconic mano-a-mano thing was going to continue on for like a long fucking time as the icon for the turn, right? For the fourth turning, for the turn of so much relative to the chaos that's in our world now. And so it's going to be a really cool temporal marker to observe, and a very important one, perhaps the most important one that I had ever had forecast.
Okay, he's making sense, whether you agree with him or not. He is making sense.
within that, in the data sets, you know, even more important than Bitcoin or any of this other shit, right? At that level. Okay, so that was 2009. We go to 2019, and Dick and I have our interview about it, but it doesn't happen at that time, right? Because the debate never happened. A pre-presidential election debate, right? Maybe it was 2020. So, but right in that time period. Okay, now it's 2024, and we have this same temporal marker of Trump and Rogan, but as a duo, right? Not as part of a debate, showing up. So we're back to the temporal marker, and they've now confirmed that they're going to do this. I have no idea what day or anything. I'm out of the loop as far as that goes. I don't get a chance to really catch up with a lot of that. I'm so busy around
Rogan Trump interview. That was about 3 weeks ago, wasn't it?
here that all I can do is sometimes I turn stuff on and I sometimes catch a little of it, you know, on the audio as I'm passing through. Okay, so now let's understand a few things here, okay? No, we'll get to that in a second. Okay, so at the time that I did that in 2009, I'd been working with this guy since since 1999. Okay, this was my Igor. We called him Igor. That was a fake name, right? He didn't want to be associated. He had a professional career. He didn't want to be associated with this lunacy. And he didn't want his name attached or whatever, right? And he had other issues. So anyway, so he's been anonymous. We go along. We make make this thing work. He works with me for a better part of or more than a decade on the thing. As the data wrangler, right? He was doing a lot of that aspect of it. And I was out writing the code and stuff. Anyway, because of the situation now, okay, so Igor and I parted ways when I had to shut my process down after the heavy hand of censorship run up into 2017. So around 2012, well, actually around 2002, the censorship started rolling in. I knew this because I was tracking the Department of Defense introduction of the flat Earth meme as a PSYOP in 2002, and I started writing about it, and it got heavy-handed shut down. It was like canceled everywhere. I would post it, and it'd be taken down almost immediately. Didn't matter where, right? There were very few outlets at that time. Substack didn't exist and all this kind of stuff. I put it on my website once, but I was dependent, and we got hit by DDoS attacks you would not believe, and so I took it down myself just in order to get that bandwidth free because I needed it for the data stuff. Anyway, so the censorship clamps down on me too hard. I had other issues there. I was still in the process of the long 30-year process of discovering. I wasn't inclined to go and fight a lot of stuff at that point on this level for this stuff, and so my assistant here, Igor, was quite happy. He had purchased a lot, like buckets and buckets and buckets of Ethereum. And he was happy as a clam at high tide. And so it didn't bother him that we were shutting down. It wasn't a real problem for him. Anyway, he got hold of me the other day as a result of this temporal marker, as a result of of him hearing about Trump and Rogan. He's not in the country. There was a slight delay on him finding this stuff out. Anyway, he gets hold of me and he wanted to remind me of something. It's like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Okay, so he retired. He's happy. He's living in a tropical paradise. He's one of probably the top. I'm certain he's one of the top % richest guys on the islands that he's living on. Anyway, but he was letting me know, hey, remember that. See, we didn't keep the data. It was just too voluminous. The resources were thin. I didn't have vast quantities of storage, nor media, nor the ability to keep it safe, right? I live out in the Northwest, and the conditions can be quite hard on electronics and data. Anyway, he reminded me about this thing, about at the time in 2009 that the temporal marker showed up that is now labeled as the Rogan Trump interview temporal marker. which is now identifying the time we're in. That was linked to Bitcoin prices and all different kinds of stuff, right, in those data sets going all the way back to 2009. Bear in mind, I think it was 2009 that they released the white paper with Satoshi's name on it. So we didn't even have Bitcoin software or mining or anything at that point. Anyway, though, so in that original temporal marker data set, there was this stuff, and Igor, and the reason it really stuck out in his mind was because he and I fought about it for so much. Well, not fought about it, but argued over the how it would have to be interpreted, okay? Because I use a strict denotation, a strict interpretation of a word based on its absolute definition, in terms of correct grammar and so on. So, what we ended up doing was doing it my way. I was paying the freight, but the word was melee. Okay, MELEE. This is a word that is basically military in origin in terms of its use in the English language. And Igor was in the Air Force. Okay, so I don't mean to laugh. I don't mean to be denigrating about it, but they don't teach history of combat or any of this kind of stuff that I knew of to Air Force non-coms, which is what Igor was. He was a non-commissioned officer. A data integrity specialist, all different kinds of cool stuff. Basically, though, as I understand it, he spent a lot of his time in the Air Force playing poker. Anyway, so melee has a very specific meaning, okay? So a melee is not just a bunch of guys standing up and flinging and fighting, right? So it's not a big knockdown, drag out brawl in a tavern or something. People put the word to it, but that's not accurate. Okay, it is a
what is it then?
Military term. A melee is when an organized act of warfare, an organized combat activity degenerates into what we think of as like a basic brawl. Every person for themselves, any weapon at hand, totally disorganized, completely disorganized. Last man standing wins.
It's exactly the same as a pub melee. What are you talking about?
Kind of thing, right? Or fight your way out to survive kind of thing. So a famous melee is Custer's Last Stand. Okay, General Asshole Custer. He led an organized troop, and then
apparently he was a bit of an a-hole, Custer.
And they made their battle plans and stuff when they were knew they were going to be attacked. And in the end, it degenerates down into hand-to-hand fighting with no organization at all, no one able to direct things. Okay. And so basically it's that aspect of it that Igor and I were discussing. So first off, note that you convert or it transitions a combat action transitions into a melee by the control evaporating. Okay, and everybody's on their own after that, it's okay. So, all right. So it's the control aspect of it that's the issue, okay? We're going to come back to something else in a second.
At Officeworks, keep your home safe and secure with Arlo. Set up your home with Arlo's smart security cameras trusted by millions. Enjoy peace of mind with ultra-high definition video and easy installation. Shop smart security solutions at Officeworks.
Zyrtec. No hay fever tablet works faster.
What is bacteria? Loves all about being balanced.
Balance your being.
That's real well-being.
I buy New Balance shoes.
All right, so Igor and I, he wanted to make Melee temporally show up over here in terms of its representational, or in terms of its input on our temporal range. Okay, in Melee, there's a lot of words that basically are describing a condition that existed prior to this word manifesting into our reality, right? So there could be a huge amount of fighting, and then it degenerates into a melee. So you can't say that, the melee part is the beginning of anything. The melee is actually the end. It's the degradation of the fighting, even in large combat, like Navy boats. Melee is a naval term. It was also been adapted to the Army, etc. But it meant naval vessels fighting at abnormally close quarters, right? And all different kinds of stuff. So anyway, we had this situation after the Joe Rogan interview in our data back in 2009. And it was confirmed before. It was one of the reasons I did it. It was confirmed before I commissioned the remote viewing guys to have a look, right? I wanted confirmation of what we were seeing. I mean, I don't follow politics. At the time that all this was going on in 2009, Trump was not even a figure in any of this. And Joe Rogan was, but he wasn't like a big major thing, right? So I didn't have any hooks and any personalities involved. It was just two cutouts, just two placeholders, two variables for me. What turned out to be a podcaster and the president of the United States that were just going to blow the whole thing wide open. The reason that this is the case is because that TM had a lot to do with the UFO discussion, right? And the secret technology and all of this kind of shit. That's why in the data sets, it became such a standout, such a iconic temporal marker, was because it appears just ahead of Sci-Fi World starting to manifest. And it is such that 100 years from now, people can go back and look at this video, look at the interview itself, and know that that was the absolute threshold being crossed as we move into Sci-Fi World. Okay, so that's set up aside. So I'm talking with Igor, and he reminded me this, and to be honest, I totally spaced on it. But that was the reason that I had contacted Dick Allgaier and his remote viewing guys, was because we'd had that melee thing back in 2009, and in 2000, I think probably about 2015, maybe it started really picking up again, and I'll describe that in a second. And so I was prompted to get hold of Dick Allgaier as like sort of a sanity check on what I was seeing. Anyway, and
I was never here. I believe in the marine kingdom. I believe in mermaids. I've seen YouTube videos. There's dead set mermaids out there, and they're the sirens from the Bible, I think.
So we had this situation within the data in 2009 that had been reinforced over the years from 2009 through to 2015 that said that 39 days after this TM took place, we would have and this is where Igor and I did our fighting, we would have this visible contention that would dissolve into a melee. And at the time, and even in our conversations here recently, he wanted to say, and I'll title this way in honor of Igor here, but he wanted to say that it was 39 days to melee, which is a catchy phrase. Okay, it'd be a nice title for a book or something. But in my opinion, that's not quite accurate, right? Because we don't know what the distance is between the organized visible contention that then degrades into the melee. That might be months for all we know. But what we do have some justification for suggesting is that there will be 39 days between the temporal marker of the Trump interview and the appearance of this visible contention. And we're not talking, people taking on migrant gangs that are taking over apartment buildings. That kind of visible contention may well be in there, but the stuff that had been motivating me to get hold of Dick Allgeier was the visible contention between space aliens. Okay, so, or whatever, right? Alien reproduction vehicles or whatever the hell. Who knows what's going on? Because we can't validate any of it at this point, right? But the data set said that 39 days after this temporal marker, giant, huge, iconic temporal marker, to be honest, I never thought I would live to actually see it occur.
I was never here. I found a channel that talks a lot about Bigfoots and cryptid creatures and all that, the confessionals. I opened up with them actually. If you get onto their channel, they do all the stuff about Sasquatches and cryptid creatures and things like that. Very informative.
In the interview with Dick Allgeier, I was, had just gone, was hanging on and entering into the recovery period, right? And so that took 2019, 2020, 21, and about half of 22. Then I was fit enough to go on to this next phase, which was the rebuilding of my fighting frame by way of building an Aiki body, they call it. You have to go and understand Shinshin Soitsu Aikido, Tohei Sensei, O Sensei, Ueshiba, O Sensei in the techniques. Okay, and I'm 71 now, and I'm able to rebuild muscle mass, right? It is tedious, it is work. So it's not like it's a pill or anything. It doesn't work that way. But in any event, so I did all of this, right? In this intervening period of time here. Okay, so now we have this temporal marker appearing, but at the time that Dick and I were doing that interview, I knew it would occur, but I honestly, 2019, I wasn't sure I was going to survive, right? I was hopeful that there wouldn't be any more crises, but you just never can tell, right? Anyway, though, it was pleasing to have lived at least that long that I saw the linguistics about that temporal marker appear in the media. Now we've got that same set of linguistics again, and apparently we have confirmation that the interview will take place, and therefore we'll have it as a temporal marker itself. And so that sets going a sort of a timer. Bear in mind what I was telling you about how we get these times, right? It's a software adding up all of this shit based on all these words, and we're constantly wrong to some great degree. And it varies based on the size of the set, the amount of processing it takes, and yada, yada, yada. So it's not like any kind of guaranteed date or anything, right? It is just, I am alluding to the possibility that there's a short period of time between barely over a month between the temporal marker and the visible contention that will appear in the skies that from the descriptors we had back in 2009, will go to the idea of UFO versus UFO and UFO versus jets. Okay, so like sort of very complex kind of Independence Day kind of shit, right? Nobody will know who the hell is doing what with whom. Now, okay, so you think that's unlikely and so on, as do I. All this shit's always unlikely until it happens. Possible, not probable, right? So anyway, now we have a strange thing where there's swarms of 20-foot drones flying around military bases. So unknown. Nobody knows who owns these drones, who's controlling them. At least they're not telling us guys. I would suspect that the military would be freaking out if they can't see the signals that are directing those drones, and those drones are a Kavas weapon, where one of the I won't describe it, but basically you set off a group of drones that don't report back to headquarters until they're all done. Okay, they don't ever say anything back to headquarters at all. All their communications are between the drones. If drone number one that's leading the pack gets taken out just like a flight of geese, then the number two takes over, et cetera, et cetera. That's a particular kind of a design. I worked on something like that in the 70s and implemented it for some software for the Department of Fisheries in the late 80s, okay? And that software ran 25 years without needing servicing, so to speak, and didn't break down because it was redundant, because it had, you know, if the number one computer went down, the number two took over. And they talked to each other intermittently to say, yeah, I'm here, that kind of thing. So everybody knew what was going on. This is pre-internet. Internet came along and it was just cheaper to discard that software and do it in a, you know, web-based interface. Anyway, so we now have those kind of drones doing their own, I'm gonna go get that, hang on a second, doing their own controls. And so it's quite possible we may end up with one of these melees. I'll be back in a minute.
Okay, part two. This guy's pretty fascinating. I'm glad someone told me about him.
Your internet network should just network. With Buddy, there's no tap.
Okay. Sorry about that. The snout nose. I could smell the hooks were done, and it's glazed over perfect, just fine. So it was great to let it go until the snout told me, because you never know with huckleberries, you know, because of the nature of the berry and how they ripen and all that kind of stuff. No, guys, no, nobody out there. Anyway, okay, so we're going to have these, some kind of weird confrontation, visible contention, which we could probably call in term combat, in the skies that will show up, and it'll show up at a predictable point, which is probably something over a month, and we'll put down 30 days or 39 days, something over a month after the temporal marker of Trump and Rogan. And that's just the beginning of all of this, right? So in my understanding of what we were looking at back in 2009, and I can't refresh because again we weren't able to keep any of that data. We ended up with a situation where, in my opinion, melee may be a couple of months past the visible contention point. The visible contention will go on, not continuously necessarily, maybe intermittently, and maybe sporadically in terms of where it's located. And then it will degenerate in one of these combat episodes or combat encounters into a melee. And in this sense, we may also find that at that period of time, just coincidentally, you know, we got political chaos, and because we may be talking January, and we may end up with a melee itself on the ground, you know, as above, so below kind of thing, right? But the melee in the skies was what was being forecast in 2009. Again, this is all part of a large set that was dominated by this temporal marker as the iconic threshold that you step up into to get into sci-fi world. And so we'll be having our entrance into sci-fi world here. Okay, so, all right, so that's our basic subject number one, right? That maybe the melee, in my opinion, it would be fitting with data I have now if that melee actually starts showing up in January 15th through February 15th, in that period of time, because there's going to be all kinds of chaotic activity in that period of time.
Okay, this is a month old, so he's talking about this January.
And anyway, and the data sets in 2009, both Igor and myself were saying, well, it's odd that we didn't find a lot of references about crowds and their reaction, okay? And it may be that you can't be in a crowd on the street in that period of time and be looking at the sky because there's a melee right around you, and you got to keep your eyes focused just to stay alive. We don't know what the conditions are going to be, but we didn't find a lot of confirmatory extra set descriptors that would define an environment that would place it into a big nice complete picture for us. We had a lot of good stuff, the temporal marker, all that kind of stuff showing up very firm and so on. But the melee part, we didn't have, it was squishier. Okay. So, all right. So now that aside, the entrance into sci-fi world, how do we want to, okay, so let me stop for a second and say, we have a bunch of people out in the alternative media, which is now pretty much the evolving into the mainstream media, that in my opinion, are a little bit slow mentally, right? And these guys don't quite grasp what's going on, so they're using words inappropriately. And so I'm going to give you a context here that hopefully you'll be able to understand why these people are perceiving these words this way, perceiving our situation and applying these words. So back in the day, you would have a hill and you'd have a general up on that hill. Okay. And then that general down in the battlefield would be directing all kinds of troops against an enemy. All right. And so the general's standing up on the hill here, and he's, looking at it all, and he's telling runners, and they're sending information, and he's telling the troops, okay, you guys move over there. You got somebody coming over here. The general's got spotters up there from other hillsides that are telling him all of this kind of stuff. We're talking, ancient battles all the way up into like the 1800s, because this kind of thing was how they did cannons. Even naval battles are essentially that. The admiral thinks he knows, he's got a good sensory awareness of where these other ships are, even if he can't see them over the horizon, right? They had finally had ship-based howitzers that can throw something over the horizon, over 3 or 4 miles. And so they could shoot a ship over the horizon if they kind of knew where it was. And thus the game Battleship, where you're guessing as to where the battleships are, but you do it with a strategy, etc. Okay, so these generals did all of that in order that those battles might be won, in order that the war might be won. Okay, and the people that were involved down here, they're just following orders. Okay, they know the concept of what's going on. And actually, in these kind of wars, well, I won't go into it, too much of a diversion in any event. So, the generals are directing people that at least had an understanding. Oh, okay, when my sergeant tells me to run over there, I run over there. That sergeant knew that he should be telling his troops to run over there when the lieutenant told him that, hey, make your troops run over there. Make your company move over there, right? All the way up the chain. Okay, but they all knew what all this was leading to. Okay, so for the Charlie Ward kind of guys that are out there, it's all a pantomime, or you hear some of these people saying it's all a movie. They're not viewing this thing appropriately, okay? Because this war is not like all of these wars. So it's not all troops in an organized fashion versus other troops in an organized fashion. It's all ephemeral, and it's all thought and paradigm and words sweeping through the population and dominating against other dynamic paradigms, not against people with bullets, but in a sense against a general that's directing all of this shit. And in this sense, people like Charlie Ward and all these decode guys that are saying, oh, it's just a movie, and Charlie Ward says it's a pantomime, a play. It's their interpretation of the moves that they see being made. Okay, what they don't grasp is what they're seeing is the general issuing the orders and the population moving, and they're sitting over here on the side watching all this, and they see that, and to a great extent they do not grasp that in this case population in here that is being moved around and is both a target and a tool and a weapon is ignorant of what's going on. Okay, that's why all the Q drops had to happen, was to create all the non-coms and all the lieutenants and all the captains and all the majors and all the colonels, such that there could be a disorganized, decentralized, distributed command structure with no overt ties, okay? Only ties that could be discovered in hindsight by seeing who talked to who, that kind of thing, or who said what. So that infrastructure was built by the Q drops, by all of these weird ass people running around being QAnons and saying, hey, what the fuck does this shit mean? And so, okay, and so in that sense, all of those Anons were initiates, okay? Many of them, probably the vast majority of them, did not understand that they were being initiated into a command structure understanding by the process that they went through within the Q drops and the decoding of it. And many of them probably still would not understand that their learning the language, going into it all, et cetera, was intended to not only give them information, but also to change the way their mind worked and to provide them with this like basic training for their role in this command structure. So people like Charlie Ward and other people I've heard reference and say it's all a movie and stuff. Well, to a certain extent, all wars are like that, because you could always, if you were sitting up here as a civilian watching these old style battles, you could see it that way, right? Oh, you know, all of this shit down here, it's all a movie relative because you got a director up there. And so this is where it gets dangerous. It's not, you know, their vision, the decoders and and Charlie Ward and stuff, not the Anons, but even the Anons, their vision of themselves in a historical perspective relative to what's going on in a grander historical perspective is very limited. And so Charlie thinks it's all fake. He thinks it's all a movie. He thinks it's all scripted. It's going to go this way. It's going to go that way, and so on, right? And nothing could be further from the truth. Everything is in a dynamic state of flux. It's actually all quite chaotic, and it's the way in which warfare, as we understand it, or contention, I keep coming back to that, it's not really a war if there's not bankers involved. That's the way contention will be in the future, for a lot of different reasons, and we don't need to get diverted. Okay, so hang on a second, I'm going to make a quick analysis. Okay, I'll get into this other little bit stuff here real quick. Anyway, so it's not a movie, but it is controlled and directed. There are plans that we could think of as a script, and none of them will ever happen as they are planned. You know, that's a law of war. First contact with enemy destroys all your plans. Because they're not going to do as you planned for them to do.
That's a good saying. I've never heard that one before.
So anyway, so we have to bear that in mind. Okay, so there you got the people out there saying it's a movie and stuff, especially in this period of time now and into the future, thinking that you're not at risk because it appears to be directed. Okay, you still need to maintain a heightened sense of awareness. You know,
I was never here. I love MK Ultra stuff. If you got a link, I'll gladly check it out.
Personal proximity, what the fuck's going on around me, and this kind of thing, and hold yourself, you know, prepared to deal with unexpected circumstances, because there's going to be a lot of it going forward for some considerable period of time. All right, so now, okay, so all right, let me go. All right, over here is a long list of languages. Okay. It starts at the top, it says Farsi, and then it goes Middle Persian, and it keeps going down all these languages here. Let me pull that over a bit, see if we can get a better view of that. Yeah, a little bit. Middle Persian, you know, back through all the other Persians, back in, finally into Sanskrit, and then Avestan, okay? Then there's a couple of dots there representing 3 or 4 other languages, and then you come back to this other language called Hurrian, Hurrian. This is about 5,000 years old. Okay, so that's back in the previous descending Dwapara Yuga, okay? Yeah. The Bronze Age, the previous descending Bronze Age. We're now in the ascending Bronze Age. So Hurrian, okay, so we've got the descending silver. Okay, so there's the golden age, the last golden age. And here's the descending silver. then the descending bronze. Then we're
If these gods are so powerful, how couldn't they keep everyone in the golden age? Why did we have to descend in the lower ages if they run the show? Doesn't make sense.
into the Kali Yuga, and then we start going up in the ascent again. And so here we have bronze, and then silver. Okay, so we're right here, right down there now. Okay, but 5,000 years back, somewhere in that area, in the descending Bronze Age, was a group of people that call themselves, or at least as far as we know, that we now call Hurrian. Okay, and we know most of our stuff about Hurrian not because we have a lot of stuff in that language or about that language, but because we have a lot of reports, or not. I mean, okay, I say a lot. We have some. All this stuff is sparse and minuscule, and you got to work your ass off to get into it. But we have Avestan, which is a precursor to Sanskrit and also coexisted with Sanskrit for a long time. Anyway, and that references some of the Hurrian stuff, okay? And so what I wanted to get into was this concept of the Jadu, all right? Which is, I think, it's where we get the Jedi stuff from. But it's J-A-D-U. Now, it's a long vowel and long U. Okay, so Jadu is a word that comes to us from Hurrian and comes all the way up to Farsi. And we have this word in Farsi now as Jadu Gar. Gar is a word that means, in Hurrian, it means doer in the body. It's a very interesting word, okay? Because Gar is not a person. Although nowadays, in some of these languages up in here, they just translated it as meant a person. And that was not what the Hurrians meant by that, okay? The Hurrians meant by that very specifically local consciousness, that which motivates the body. So the technical definition for the Gar word is doer in the body, the person that, the being that moves the body of the person into and doing all of this stuff, right? Because without without local consciousness, there is no motive action. There's no movement or anything. The Hurrians were very sophisticated this way. It's really striking. Okay, now it's not a mystery to me because I know that they were coming from a much more advanced age and that we were all dropping down into the stupid years of the Kali Yuga down here. And so Hurrian back in this, I bet you that the information we get out of Hurrian by way of Avestan and Sanskrit goes way back into the Golden Age and was part of a much, much more rich and sophisticated understanding. But anyway, so these primitive people, the Hurrian guys, had a very complex understanding of what we would think of as like metaphysical shit, okay? And in Hurrian, they defined a spot, a space, okay? It's not a place, or it is a place, and can also be thought of as a space, but it's not material. So for the Hurrians, okay, so let me say that in Farsi, and most of these top 4 languages from Old Persian onward would define Jadugar or Yedugar, so Jadu, Jedi, it would define them as a magician. That's not what the Hurrians meant by that word, okay? Because this was, the Jadu is a place. And I understand why these other languages define it that way, because Jadu is the place from which our concept of magic arises. Okay, so get this. The Jadu is the space, or it's the place immediately on the other side of the life-death barrier. So it doesn't have a referential point. It's not like you can say it's over in that other room, right? But it very definitely exists because you're going to go there, right? Everybody does. And so Jadugar, the Jedi, are those doer in the body that, in the term of the Hurrians, are exploring this place on the other side of the life-death barrier. And they had it defined, okay? But it's not a definition. They had quite clearly defined it. And I actually think a lot of our understanding of meditation arises from these people. But anyway, they had it defined, and you can't. So in their culture, I'm imagining, because we don't have a ton of stuff from them, but I'm imagining that this thing is widespread enough that it appears in many different other languages, all referencing back to them, this concept. But I'm imagining that it was widespread enough that the word was would be taken as a basically a socially understood reference.
I was never here. Are you going to post the link to the MK Ultra stuff?
So you could say, oh, where's your cousin? Oh, he's thinking about doing a trip in the Jadu, and that would make sense to somebody, right? But anyway, the Jadugar were the people that explored this area on the other side of the life and death barrier. From my reading, I'm pretty convinced that that's the same place that I call hyperspace, that I explored with psychedelics. The Jadugar were defined as those people that had a space in time, okay? And that space was 33 hours. And so there's a lot of, we have 33 segments in our spine. The Freemasons and all these people get all bent out of shape about the number 33. David Wilcock goes crazy about it. All of these kind of people, right? It's supposedly a power number and this kind of thing. Anyway, you had to come back, or you didn't come back, okay? So there was no 34-hour Jadugar. All the Jadugar made it back within 33 hours. There's reasons to suspect you cannot come back if you're there longer than 33 hours for a lot of different reasons. But these people were mapping it out. So they had an approach in a way of getting into hyperspace that either involves psychedelics or it involves something like, self-suffocation, or who the hell knows what kind of bizarre shit they were in. Or maybe it was because they were coming out of the more golden age and they had some kind of technology, some kind of machinery. In any event, though, so this idea of getting new forms of measurement, a new understanding of what is still currently thought of as Cartesian space, but getting a new understanding of that, such that this understanding converts that complicated understanding of our three-dimensional space into a complexity, is also tied in to all of this shit here, okay? So, so I'm making some assumptions, and I'm making some assumptions relative to what I've read about what these people did and what they went through, and the fact that this has a particular language history, and all of this stuff coming up relative to the TM and the melee with the UFOs, right? And I'm relating all those together, and coming up to this forecast that goes way back into the 2009, also was reaffirmed in 2019, and was actually, we were able to, I think it was probably 2017, and we were able to apply a descriptor to it that made some sense, okay? So along with the melee and all this other stuff going on, the visible contention, and then whatever the hell is happening here on the planet, somewhere on Earth, a human or a group of humans, or maybe it's already been done and we'll find out about it in that period of time, they're going to discover this like intergalactic interweb, okay? So in other words,
I think Tesla already did discover that.
They will discover that there's communications going on constantly around us, And to a certain extent, what we think of as Akashic records may be a concept that could be applied to vast galactic civilizations talking to themselves and to each other and putting data out in a particular space. That is, in my opinion, I think it's transiting through hyperspace. I think that comes into it. But anyway, we'll discover this level of communications. And I'm of the opinion, I've got a couple of quick opinions that are going to annoy people, but I'm of the opinion that our discovery of that confirms to us why we annoy the UFOs, okay? Because the entire intergalactic interweb kind of, so I think we're disruptive at that level, not merely disrupting their navigation systems and so on. I think it's much broader than that, much bigger than that. And so it makes us a real pain in the ass, okay? Anyway, so I think that will show up, that aspect of this will discover this vast, incredibly deep, incredibly wide storehouse of knowledge. We won't be able to open it up necessarily right away, and like I say, we won't even understand what Pleiadian porn is when we see it. We might think it's a gardening show for all that. We just don't know. Anyway, so I think that is all coincident with the Melee set. So the Melee set is a temporal marker for the stuff that comes beyond it, and this is an intro into sci-fi world, as this understanding and being able to at least know that this giant internet is out there. Okay, so that was the one thing there. Hang on a second, I got some more notes. Just don't want to get into a lot of this. It could take too long. Yeah, I think that's about it. I won't do my bitching and stuff at this point. There's no point to really getting into it.
Okay, I'm glad we found this guy. He's got one that goes for an hour, but that's tomorrow. I'll do that tomorrow. I haven't got time to do it today. So I'll finish off with some James Caddis. Bit of political update. There you
go. Be ready to treat them. With Allianz Comprehensive Car Insurance, you can save on your premium by increasing your basic excess. Get your quote today. Allianz.
Welcome to the channel. And hopefully by me doing this, it's the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia just made a stunning statement about the nation of Israel. And folks, make no mistake, there's way more to that statement than meets the eye. All right, folks, let's get into this one. I want to say this before I read this article because there is so much to unpack here. And I'm only going to unpack one very important aspect that dramatically affects what this story actually means. And hopefully by me doing this, it's going to help you to better understand my mindset and my approach regarding all of these issues. Now, the first thing I want to say is this, and that is when I make these videos, I really want you to understand, I hope you'll understand, I hope you see it by now, that I'm trying to bring more to the table than just simply bring you a news item. What I hope to do is tell you something that's happening, especially as it relates to biblical patterns, Bible prophecy, things like that. I really want you guys to be able to understand and not really read between the lines per se, but to do even more than that. I think that there's so much to say about the opportunity that's in front of us when we see these things happening in that part of the world, actually anywhere in the world, and understanding what it means according to what the biblical precedent really is. And so when you read a story like this, I don't want you to learn how to see it for what most people think it is. I don't want you to take it at face value. I want you to dig deeper. I want you to be able to better understand what's really happening here and why it actually makes a difference. And this story is one of those cases. If you were to simply read the story and take it for face value, it would be not only shallow, but at the same time, it would blind you from being able to understand or see or recognize what is actually happening in this big game of chess known as Middle Eastern geopolitics. And this one is a big deal, and this statement is a big deal because it will have significant ramifications in areas that most people will never even consider, only because of what this statement was actually designed to do. Now, some people will look at this and think that this statement is a simple condemnation on Israel, and it is the Crown Prince making some very aggressive and bold assertions, when in reality, what he's simply doing is he is preparing the way for a broader road to be traveled down, and he is, in essence, in many ways, pushing an Overton window, so to speak, in order to be able to facilitate a representation that actually creates a little bit more unity in how it's being done. In other words, what he's doing is he is creating a perception of objectivity when in reality he has very little of it under him right now. And there's a lot to talk about when we discuss this specific article. So let's get into it. The title of the article is this: Saudi Crown Prince leads Riyadh summit with sharp rebuke of Israel. The subtitle says, Bin Salman rallies 50 Arab and Islamic regional leaders. Mahmoud Abbas calls for Israel to end occupation within a year. It's just interesting how Mahmoud Abbas would get on this kick. And it's even more interesting to understand just how devilish that man is. But that's a whole other story, and we'll get into that in just a second. But look what it says here in the article. It says, at Monday's Arab Islamic Summit in Riyadh, Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman delivered a point.
I was never here. Do you know how to copy and paste?
Critique of Israel's actions, reaffirming his nation's opposition to the military campaign.
Okay, the link was blocked then. We can't do much about that then. Must mean it's a dangerous link if they blocked it.
Wait, I just want you to understand some of the very loosely floated words that's being spoken here. When I read his quote, you'll be able to better understand how disambiguous some of this can be, and actually how it can take on several different meanings depending on the context in which it's used, especially if it's being said in Arabic. So the translations here make this a very, very interesting story, but without the nuancing, without understanding what's actually happening, this could be perceived as just a brutal condemnation on Israel without any understanding or room for what may be a future normalization agreement. And folks, I'm telling you this right now, the one thing bin Salman wants is normalization. He is not interested in carrying on the plight of the Palestinian, especially understanding the fact that the Palestinians destruction of all Jews. He knows that's not a reality. He knows they're here to stay. He knows there's no way in the world that anything like that could even happen, which is why this becomes something even more significant. And folks, I want you to see this for what it is, and make no mistake, this is a big deal. Now, by the way, before I read this quote, the one thing that I want to remind you of is the way it sounds in English is always going to be different from what he says in Arabic. And although I don't know whether or not he said this in English, I can tell you it's very likely because of the guest list that's sitting there, he is undoubtedly speaking in Arabic. And if you translate this from Arabic to English, there's a lot of nuancing that has to happen. And I can promise you it can be taken a series of different ways and understood to mean a series of different things. With that said, let me read the quote. It says, the kingdom stands firmly against any diminishment of the Palestinian Authority's role and violations of Lebanese sovereignty. This is what his declaration is, adding that Saudi Arabia, here's the quote, categorically rejects any interference with humanitarian operations in Gaza. He emphasized the Palestinian Authority's qualification for full UN membership and notably expressed opposition to attacks on Iranian territory. By the way, I just want you to notice something. This is a very, very inflammatory representation to be making if you look at it basically for what a lot of people think it is. But my guess is that there is more than meets the eye here. Let me read this next paragraph and you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about when I say this. The gathering drew an unprecedented assembly of regional leaders, including Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, and Jordan
Thanks, Diane.
Abdullah.
I'm going to do a stream on that. I was never here. I like that MK Ultra stuff. I'll do a whole program on things like that tomorrow, probably.
Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani, Lebanese Prime Minister Najib Mikati, and Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas were among the approximately 50 Arab and Islamic leaders present at the conference. By the way, this is really interesting because this is a picture here that I want to show you that this article features. Now, mind you, this picture is not from the meeting. This picture is actually from Mahmoud Abbas being at a Turkish parliamentary meeting during a really, really interesting session that took place in Ankara in August. As a matter of fact, I talked about this a little bit, I think in one of the live shows, but notice the scarf that he's wearing that actually has a Turkish flag and the Palestinian Authority flag. There's some very interesting implications that come from that, and I am almost certain that this picture is from that meeting, which, by the way, speaks to the very complicated relationship that exists between Erdogan and, of course, Abbas, because Erdogan has very publicly condemned Abbas on a lot of levels for a few different things, mostly related to him no-showing to some very important Turkish events, and, of course, Abbas biting back when he felt disrespected. So it's kind of an interesting play on I think emotions that exist within this particular context, and that's what makes a lot of the stuff that Saudi Arabia is saying very much superficial on a lot of levels, and we'll get into that in just a second. Let's look at the last paragraph here. It says, convened to build upon previous diplomatic initiatives, the summit aimed to advance ceasefire efforts in Gaza and Lebanon while addressing the pressing need for expanding humanitarian aid delivery. The leaders also discussed recent developments in Israel's conflicts with Hamas and Hezbollah. Now, I'm going to tell you what I think is going on here, and I think it's really important to stop for one moment and to pause upon and reflect upon the significance of what just happened at this point. I actually believe that this meeting that took place had absolutely nothing to do with Saudi Arabia taking advantage of an opportunity to condemn Israel. I think that the real purpose of this meeting was to establish a set of real kind of feelers out there to understand where the rest of the Arab world is with respect to the things that are not only developing in Israel, but the things that are developing within the potential for Saudi Arabia to develop a normalization type of an agreement with Israel as well. I think that the type of language that you see Ben Shalomin using, I am convinced is very boilerplate language, something that is very nominalized in Arabic when it's actually being said. And I think that it's just a simple, let me get through the nice comments here and there so I can get down to the nitty gritty of this. What I think is interesting is if you look this meeting up, you're not going to find a lot of coverage on it, and there's not a lot of discussion about what happened in this meeting. And I can tell you this, there's not a lot of video that goes over many of the things that actually happened in this summit, which is why I am beginning to think more and more that Saudi Arabia is very aggressively and actively putting out these feelers to make a determination as into what is going to
Weet-Bix. How do you do yours?
Been postponing your car check? At Pedders, we offer an affordable and easy brakes.
Going to be the best pathway to achieve normalization with the hope and the intent of creating a larger economic base and taking the eyes and the attention off of the area of Jerusalem and focusing it more on Mecca, specifically on Saudi Arabia. And I think that this is really interesting because there's a lot of things that's contributing to this. Now, I've talked about some of the variables in recent videos that I've done. Matter of fact, the video that I did on the Temple Mount, the recent video, the last one, as a matter of fact, I talk extensively about this. And I speak about the fact that Saudi Arabia finds itself to be in a very difficult situation in that many of the scholars are coming out. They're beginning to point out the obvious. They're seeing the things.
Well, Di, doesn't that link look really good? I'll be playing that tomorrow or the next day. That looks really good.
That are happening literally in front of them, and they're recognizing the fact that Islam is not what it purports to be. Many people are beginning to talk about the textual criticism or the lack of, or the lack thereof, associated with the Quran. Lots of people are talking about even whether or not many of the things that Islam claims or the Quran claims is actually valid, especially the claim that the Quran is God's perfect and unadulterated word, when in reality you have to understand the word of Allah is very much adulterated if you look at what the Quran actually means. And I think what's more significant than even that relates to the stuff that Jay Smith and I have been talking about as of late, and that is the very Muhammad of Islam is not Muhammad of Islam. He is Muhammad, and probably very likely a reference to the Messiah, which is so interesting when you think about it, because if all of that is true and the scholarship seems to point to it, then that would mean that the origin of Islam comes from a Christian heresy that was being taught somewhere around the 8th century AD.
And that's probably why you got a lot of Bible prophets in the Quran.
And this is a very, very interesting set of facts to be chasing down, but I think MBS is catching up to this. I think he's recognizing it. I think he's looking at the sentiment that exists amongst many of the scholars that are further east from where he is,
Phil. God bless,
across
mate.
the Persian Gulf and into places like India and Pakistan, and he's beginning to recognize the idea that Islam is not what everybody makes it out to be, and undoubtedly Mecca could not have been the home base for a Muhammad that never existed, because Mecca never existed. And that makes a lot of sense when you begin to consider all of the things that Saudi Arabia is doing. Look, folks, they're bringing in things like competitions. They are supporting boxing events. They're bringing in all kinds of things that really bring the focus on Saudi Arabia. They're beginning to try to take control of.
Muslims don't like boxing because it's one-on-one. They'd much rather 3-on-1.
The Temple Mount area, so that they can, in essence, shelf off its importance, so that it's not something that's really focused on. They would much rather that people focus on the Kaaba that is in Mecca, much more than they would rather have them focusing on Jerusalem, more than they would have them focusing on Al-Aqsa. There's something that they don't want them to be anywhere near. And I think that this becomes even more significant because I think Saudi Arabia recognizes that they are in a fight, not just for their existence, but they're in a fight for their ability to be able to strive and grow. And if this becomes a nature or an issue where the nature of this discussion becomes an argument regarding the validity of Islam as it stands, the biggest people to lose here is Saudi Arabia. And I think that I have to do something that's really important, and I have to go back to what Ezekiel 38 tells us. And Ezekiel 38 mentions Saudi Arabia, literally tells us that Saudi Arabia will be amongst those who object to the attack that is being led by Gog and the other nations that joined him in doing what they do to Israel. So none of this should become surprising to us, in that I think that what you are seeing and the news article that I just read to you is evidence of a very complex effort that's being made with a series of very intricate issues by Saudi Arabia to try to bring some level of acceptance amongst the Arab world for normalization, with the hopes that they will be able to effectively incentivize everybody who would nod their head and say it's okay. And there's a lot of people that stand to benefit from this. And I want to make myself very, very clear. If you don't see that, it may simply be because you're not familiar with all of the variables that are involved in this. One of the names that was mentioned in the article that I read to you is El-Sisi. And this is the Egyptian president. And you have to understand, he stands to gain a lot from this, because Egypt is in the middle of a significant water conflict. And I'm not just talking about what's happening with the Suez Canal. I'm also talking about something that's even more significant than that. And that's the fact that what you see is that Egypt may be at risk of not even having enough drinking water. And that's creating a massive conflict, or what could be a conflict, with Ethiopia. And there's some other issues that are going on with water rights in that area that we haven't had the time to really examine or talk about. I made a video about this roughly 3 months ago, where we had a conversation regarding this issue with Egypt. But the bigger issue here, and the one that I think is more important, is Egypt, I think, is becoming more duly incentivized to want to go along with the agenda of Saudi Arabia. And if Egypt buys onto this, then they know they're going to make way more money from Saudi Arabia because of the modified trade routes than they ever will operating the Suez Canal. And I think that this is a very, very, very important thing to recognize or consider in play of this, and understand MBS would never be able to establish any type of a foundational relationship with any of these players had it not been for some of the rhetoric that you see being listed here in the newspaper. And it would make a lot of sense that the news coverage, the mainstream news coverage, is going to be covering something like this without actually nuancing the complications that erect from all of this, and without simply explaining what may be on the mind of the royal family. And folks, I can tell you this. You can look back at the interview with Brett Baer, and you'll even see in that interview where MBS says that it's a shame that his nation has fallen in the rankings of economic power as reflected by their GDP. And he says that he has a very clear and stated intention to want to re-erect, so to speak, Saudi Arabia's power base into economics, especially as it relates to the G7. He's in G20 right now. He wants to be in G7. He thinks that he can do that. And you know what? There's a good chance that he can do that, especially considering all the projects that they're working on, whether it be Naum, whether it be what they're doing with all of these sports things that they're doing, whether it be the work that they're doing in establishing new trade routes and actually creating a little bit more of a incentive with all of the other Arab nations that participate in it. I think that he's looking at self-defense. And when I say self-defense, I'm talking about national defense. I think he's considering a lot of aspects that Saudi Arabia needs, but yet as a tool can be used to grow its economic standing. And so I think that he has to say these things, and I think that he has to do these things because it's the only way he can take a step moving forward in establishing normalization. By the way, it's interesting because Israel just now, matter of fact, I don't know if you guys heard this story, but Israel a few days ago, at the time of this recording, it was literally a few hours ago, but Israel just now made an announcement that they're going to be expanding the size of the portion in Gaza that they're going to be giving to humanitarian effort. And I think they're doing that as a result of the fact that they have more control over it, especially because of the concession of Hamas. Yet I don't know if I would call it a complete concession because they still haven't given up these hostages, or at least told us where to locate them. But at the same time, I also think that it's a reflection of the fact that Israel is trying to play the game, because they know that if they can normalize, they not only expand their economic development, but they also expand their national security interests. And so all of this is really important to both parties. And I think that they're both playing the game. And I think that they're becoming very effective at playing the game. And it's not anything that should surprise us. Folks, look, I have to tell you this. And I think this is a really good way to end this thought.
Okay, guys, I'm out. God bless.
I told you at the beginning of this video that the whole reason why I make these videos is to help you to be able to connect the dots and to understand what's happening from moment to moment, and to not just simply take something at face value, but to analyze it in light of what you know God's word says. And if you know what the end game is, and you know what God's word says, then being able to connect the dots